It's Friday. Oh, yes. There we go. Live and direct from, well, for me, from one part of London, and then Russ in another part of London.
What do you do? Stop.
Well, I don't have the jingles today.
You incompetent dolt. Remember this. I made you. I can break you. Oh, so we don't have any
Please.
No jingles. We've got nothing.
Well, hang on. Well, I tell you what we could do. Do you know
Can't you just do that little... Oh, God. Hello, everybody. Men's radio station. I'm Russ Kane. That's Phil Dave. He's broadcasting from the toilet in the Shard, and I'm broadcasting from my normal place. The flushing sound you will hear is not only Phil's career, but also people coming in and out of the toilet. He's a very popular a member of the Shard team. Now, you can hear us on Twitter.
And that's proof that the career is going down the drain.
That's fantastic. I got to tell you something. I interrupted myself. I got to tell you something, Phil. Hello, Veronica. Veronica Curran. Good morning, lovely gents. Good morning to you. He is in the gents. That's where he is. Hey, here's the thing, Phil. I love the way you're still doing your Alvin Stardust impression today. Maku-ga-choo. I love you, with the gloves. It's very good.
I have already explained to you that when I'm out and about, I do get a little bit twitchy about touching
I prefer
stuff.
it. Yeah, but that's kind of very boring, and I prefer the fact that you're doing your Alvin Stardust impression, which I think is great.
Hey, at least on the plus point, there's two things to this. Number one, my gloves match my outfit. Number two is at least there are two of them this week.
Yeah, black gloves matter. Now, here's the thing. Okay. I'll just let that sit.
Very, very slippery slope.
Let that sit there. Now, here's the thing. You know, they've launched this other huge sort of news channel under Andrew Neil. And
I had heard.
Oh, yes. And 60 million quid investment they got. 60 million. We were self-funded when we started. Me, Howard, and Penny. Happy birthday, Penny Horner, by the way.
Yes, happy birthday,
She won't be listening because she's away. Sue Sleep, good morning, guys. Hope everyone has a good weekend. Well, Sue, the weather's meant to be absolutely ghastly down here in London, so I'm not sure how good it'll be, but the weather today is hopeless. Hopeless. That's Sue Sleep in Poland, obviously, with that accent. She's up in Faith. What I was going to say to you, Philip, is this. There's my lovely cousin Francine Warner. Handsome men, please stop telling Sarah to stop phoning me at 10 o'clock at night when I'm half asleep. Now, here's the thing, gang. They had 60 million quid investment, some of it coming from Dubai. It doesn't matter where it came from. I don't care. 60 million quid. We were self-funded, right? We managed to get our captions right and look as best as we can on literally a shoestring budget. If I had 60 million quid, this would be just a sensational station with all the plans that I dreamt up we could effectively do. I don't understand, and I'm not knocking it. I really wanted GB News to succeed. I want them to succeed. I'm a fan of theirs, right? The errors they're making are such schoolboy errors. They got Theo Pathetis on, who I've met quite a few times. Very nice man. They couldn't even get his name spelt right. So he's immediately hacked off. So they've turned a positive. We've got Theo on, and he goes, "How are you spelling my name today?" He's upset. I understand that. It's disrespectful. It's quite extraordinary. You've got people of such high caliber, and they're all over the place. And I don't know why, because they've had months to get this together. And I want them to succeed. I'm not speaking as someone who's knocking them. And as for the defund hate, what a pile of crap that is. What a disgrace.
Well, you know why, don't you?
What a disgrace.
No, but you know what that is, don't you? That goes to show that they are genuinely worried now that the truth will out.
Of course they are. Of course they are. But if you've seen, here's the joke, and this is all about mental health as far as I'm concerned, because free speech, not being bullied, not being trolled is all part of mental health, right? And to have this defund the hate, when you see who's behind them, even Stalin would say, they're too left-wing for me. Karl Marx would say, not for me, boys. I think I'm going to listen to some music. Trotsky, that's a bit heavy, he would have said. All of those things. So it's an absolute nonsense. How do you feel, Phil? This is about bullying, in my view. How do you feel about large corporations being told you can't advertise with this station because we don't like their views. They're anti-woke.
Well, it's a very good question, Russ. And first of all, I must say a very good morning to Barry J. Allen, who's listening. And look, I think you know where I stand on bullying.
No,
and
I do.
What I find
you hate
quite
bullying
peculiar,
as much as I do. It's horrible.
but I think what I find quite peculiar is that there are some who believe that bullying is a one-way street. This is what I find staggering: is one can only be bullied if you happen to be on the side of wokeism. And if you happen to be on the side of what some might say the opposite view of wokeism is sanity, then I'm afraid that you are the bullies. And it just doesn't work that way. As far as I'm concerned, bullying is very much a two-way street. It's a behavior. And if you're going to behave in a certain fashion that would implicate that you're going to pick on somebody else, whether that be individual or organization, because you fundamentally disagree with their beliefs, well, then I'm sorry, you're just as bad. The bottom line is that the middle ground is everyone, but everybody is entitled to an opinion. You don't have to agree with that opinion. In fact, actually, on the contrary, it would be boring if everyone agreed with opinions. It would be lovely to think that everyone could just understand that.
Yeah. I think it's going to bounce the wrong way because I look at some of those brands who said, oh, no, we'll cave in to the hard left and we won't advertise. I don't want to support those brands now. I don't want to support those brands. If you're so gutless, screw you. I'll take my money elsewhere. That's what I believe.
Yeah, and therein,
excuse me. 1 minute. Excuse me. Hang on.
Who's at the door, Miss Ford? I love this. So you know what? You absolutely wouldn't get this on the Today Show, would you? Where you just suddenly have someone buzzing at the door. The split second the show starts. Anyway, let me tell you about some of the things we've got coming up on today's program, because we've got loads of guests coming. In just a moment, we're going to be meeting Simon Warman-Fried and also Lord de Laurentiis, and they are going to be telling us about well, I tell you what, I'm not going to give too much away. They'll tell you what they're talking about in just a moment's time later, okay, because we're meeting them in just a moment. But at midday today, we'll also be meeting John Keel, who is going to be telling us about Improved Results as well, which is the same name of the organization. And in a nutshell, he will be telling us about the work that he does in a bid to try and help those who are, well, in education, shall we say. Then at 1 o'clock this afternoon, I told you it's a very, very busy show today. Johnny Grant and Rose Campion will be joining us. And they will be along at 1 o'clock, and then at 1:30. Oh, look at that! And then at 1:30, I believe Russell has some food being delivered. Then at 1:30, of course, we end the week off with TV picks courtesy of Chantal Ricards. Now, well,
I'm sorry I was gone so long. I'm sorry I was gone so long, Philip. But the new shtick is they have to take photos. They have to take.
Oh yes.
They have to take photos. So this...
It's nothing to do with the parcel. It's to do with the fact that you're Russ Kane. They were just very excited.
Very excited. So this is... I was introduced to a cheese, which was cheddar with truffle, made by this company in Godminster. I got no association with them. I'm not going to give them an advert or anything. And I thought, I've got to get it again. So I just bought it. I only bought it yesterday. I didn't expect it to turn up from wherever Godminster is in the middle of the hub. And so that was delivery man. I'm expecting another delivery, probably during the show. So we've covered the cheese department. Cigars.
Excellent. Well, just when you thought this show couldn't get any cheesier, you'll be delighted to hear, by the way, that our guests are poised. Our first guests are poised in the digital green room, looking.
How do they look?
Well, I would suggest mildly horrified at the overexcitement surrounding truffle cheese.
The arrival of the cheese.
It's quite all right. Luckily, we are going to turn a little more sensible as soon as they do join us in about 5 minutes' time.
Okay.
Anyway, I do have to say, though, that bearing in mind that I have been privileged enough to try said cheese because
You came over, yes.
Well, you very graciously offered it as part of the cheese platter when I came
didn't
around
say
for lunch.
finish the whole bloody block of cheese, did I?
It was very good. It's not my
I said, Phil,
fault.
try a bit of the cheese.
Chrissy Holt says, "Hi boys, today leftover cottage pie with veg
nice.
and oh, Chrissy, you're going to make me cry. I have made a cherry cheesecake. Good Lord. Well, how do you like that? There you go. Again, another fine example of just how Radio 4 we truly are, where we actually share people's lunches.
John Ryan's got a great show on a Monday, 7:00. John Ryan's new show on the radio station. It's great. Hi, John. Good morning to you. Really, really impressed with this show. I thought it was going to be really good because I had a lot of conversations with John, but I didn't know it was going to be that good. Morning. Take a picture even when they leave it on your doorstep. If it gets nicked, their argument it was delivered. No, that makes perfect sense. I don't have a problem with that. That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's good for them because otherwise, why should they get into trouble? They've delivered it. They put it on your doorstep. Some bastard comes along and nicks it. Nicks my cheese, they'll die.
Well, quite. Paul Claridge says, good morning. Hope you're all loving this fabulously wet weather.
Did you see what I wrote the other day? Did you see?
Well, I don't know. What did you write the other day? And I'll tell you if I saw it.
Was it Thursday? Friday? Wednesday. Wednesday was boiling. Absolutely, like, Gobi Desert, Chantal Ricard's in Dubai, hot. So I thought, I can't sit at my computer anymore staring at the screen, writing the book and answering 1,000 emails about the radio station. So I thought, I know, I've been putting it off for ages. I'm going to power hose the terrace. So I power hosed the terrace and I wrote, and then I spent an hour watering every single pot in every plant, right? Making sure they were thoroughly soaked. And I wrote on Facebook, and I apologize in advance. Obviously, me doing that would signal the end of the world, the apocalypse. The 4 horsemen will be riding up Peckham High Street. I wasn't wrong. That evening, it started to rain. It's my fault. I'm sorry. I can only apologize.
It's a disgrace.
Very excited about our first guest. When I was growing up in northwest London, there was a chemist. All right, it was a very famous chemist called Warman Freed.
Oh yes.
It saved my bacon on a number of occasions, not least when my big kids were little kids, not the twins, but when my big kids were little kids, and they'd get like croup in the middle of the night. So you'd go out at 5 to midnight and buy a humidifying machine on all of that, the wallpaper, and all of that sort of stuff. And Warman Freed was a fantastic chemist, and we were all at school then, all the gang, and one of our gang turned out to be the cousin. Well, we were all like 15, 16 at the time. And she worked in Warman Freed during the holidays. And she was an absolute stinker. The name was Karen, absolute stinker. And what she'd do is some poor sod, because you didn't have condoms on display then. You had to ask for them. So if some poor sod came in to the chemist, Karen, who was at school, didn't care, go, have we got she'd yell across this it's a huge shop, massive. Have we got any condom? She just, it still makes me laugh 50 years later.
And that was fine. It was when she yelled out extra small, they really took offense. Now, Jeff Stevenson.
The guys were so...
Jeff Stevenson says, good morning, Russ and Phil. It's great to be back doing some gigs, but why every night are most motorways closed?
Oh, for God's
sake.
Have
had a year, and now they're telling us to stay at home, yet we can't get anywhere.
Jeff Stevenson, if you don't know, hi, Jeff. Jeff Stevenson is one of the, and I'm not just saying it because he's a good mate. We'd never met until years and years ago. We were in Panto together. We shared a dressing room, which is either heaven or, believe me, absolute hell, because you're stuck with someone for 84 shows over 2 months, day and night. And Jeff and I just hit it off, and we've been really good friends ever since. He is one of the best stand-up comics in the country, and I know that John Ryan would totally agree with that assessment. He's a brilliant comic, and
I'm just trying to imagine being stuck with someone show after show after show after show.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that.
Must be terrible.
Imagine
Right.
someone who really gets on your nerves, Phil, and after 84 shows of sharing a dressing room, I once shared with the guy. And anyway, if you get a chance to see Jeff Stevenson, he's the absolute business. He as is John Ryan, but Jeff Stevenson's the absolute business. He's so funny, never swears, and it's just such funny stuff. And
Time
he's
to
become a
say.
great actor as well. By the way, here's a bit of trivia. You remember the film Bugsy Miller? Not Bugsy. Yeah, Bugsy Miller. What was it? The musical with the kids.
Bugsy Malone.
Bugsy, right? Jeff was one of the kids.
Oh,
He was in
you
Fat Sam's
see?
gang.
Oh.
Yeah, he was in Fat
At
Sam's
Fat
gang.
Sam's Grand Slam. Lovely. Anyway, before I descend into any sort of more musical voluntary movements, let us say a very
get to my age. Involuntary movements. You don't want those.
say a very good morning to Simon Warmanfried and to Lord De Laurentiis. A very good morning to you, gents. How are you?
I'm so excited to meet anybody who is called Lord De Laurentiis. That's just the best name like ever.
Yeah, he had to pay for it, of course. That's
It's such a cool name. This is fantastic. No relation, I presume, to Dino De Laurentiis, are you? I would faint if you were.
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah, well, even so, you're both welcome all the same.
Phil, don't tap him for money.
Very much.
It's not gonna happen. Simon Warmanfried, how are you? How very lovely to see you again.
Great to see you again. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
I'm
Looking forward to tonight for the big game.
Which
you're playing Monopoly.
You're talking to me and Phil. We don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Is that a bit of Scrabble or something, is it? Or?
I'm presuming, even I know it's England, Scotland?
Yes, the one. Yeah.
Oh, we're going to lose. Guarantee Scotland. Scotland's going to win. Actually, Simon, you remind me, I'm going to have a bet on that. I'm going to bet for Scotland to win. Not that I want, I'm not partisan, but I think
hopefully your bets go in reverse.
It could do. Jules Silverman, sorry I'm late. Lovely to see you. And Lisa Jane says, Russ Kane still giggling about the surfer's joke of the flat earth. Yes. Sorry. Right. Welcome, Simon. Welcome. Now, am I pronouncing it Lorde or Lord?
It is Lord.
Lord. It's a great name. I'm so sorry. I know that's not why you're here, but everyone's going to be asking at home and go, why don't they ask him? Where'd you get the name from?
It's an interesting
obviously parents. But...
Yeah, well, sort of. So my first name is French, but my surname is Italian, and I actually took my wife's surname when we got married. So that's an interesting combination.
I should say, okie dokie. Right. Tell us all about why you're here and what you're doing and what you've been up to. And who wants to kick off, Lord or Simon? I don't mind.
We'll let Lord go first. So.
Okay, very wise, Simon. I've spoken to you. You'd only screw
it. Can you just say, I'm sorry, just for the purposes of this interview, would you please say after you, my lord? Ha
After you, my lord.
Very good.
There we go.
I have to do that every board meeting.
I promise you, no more of that moving forward. I'm sorry.
But if you go to America, they get so excited. This is Lord. My lord.
They would. Yeah, that's true. And
they love that.
They do. My wife is American, actually Italian American. So we've got that whole kind of.
Which of the mafia families is she from?
I'm afraid I can't tell you that.
Okay. Otherwise, Phil, if you never see me again, check under the patio. I'll be there.
That's it.
With the cheese.
If the cement's fresh. Okay. Lord, off you go. Tell us all about yourselves.
Okay. So we are Mandad Media Limited, and we have soft launched on social media, but we basically go live on Sunday on Father's Day. And essentially, we are a website and a digital magazine aimed purely at dads. So we basically saw a gap in the market. We thought there's a lot out there in terms of magazines for mums, magazines for kids. But actually, what about the dads? Where's the parenting advice? Where's the info? And we're really excited. We've got some experts and professionals on board. We've got real dads on board. We're engaging, with real life stories. We want to share experiences, and there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and I'm pleased to say we're ready to go for Sunday.
Brilliant. Whose idea was this? Was this between you and Simon?
It actually was born out of a conversation during lockdown last year. So very early on, 2020, we locked down as a family. So Matthew is actually, who is our ops director. He is my wife's stepson. So we were all there doing our family thing in the middle of the countryside, minding our own business while the world was going a bit crazy. And we got to talking about dads, and Matthew is a single dad. He's got 2 kids. And he was discussing with us how he found that, his experiences, things like, where to go for advice and information, as a dad, taking your kids to the GP and health visits and things like that, and kind of addressing some of the stigma and the stereotyping around those particular sort of situations. And
such as sorry, Lord, such as what? Sorry, what kind of stigmas and stereotypes are we talking about?
Well, I think I'll give you a prime example this morning. Our 12-month-old went for her development check, 12-month check this morning. And my wife and I arrived, and they said, well, sorry guys, the room's a bit too small, COVID restrictions and everything else, only one of you can come in. And the nurse practitioner who was there immediately looked at my wife to be the one to go into the room with the baby. And she looked at me and she said, but you're welcome to stay in the waiting room if you like. And no, actually, my wife's got a stack of work to do. I can do this now. I'm coming in, and I went on in and did the appointment. I'm a very hands-on parent. My wife and I talk about everything all of the time. I have all of that information to give. I can answer any questions they've got, and it's that kind of thing I think that we want to address for dads in general, but also looking at healthcare services and and their approach to how they handle mums versus dads.
It's very interesting. You I would have said, what? I can wait. Should I just go into the car park? Would that be more convenient? It's really, it is very interesting. It's funny, on another show yesterday, you were saying about advice and everything, Lord. On the ABC of CBD, we had an amazing guest on, and we were saying that you don't really know what to do when you suddenly become a parent. And I remember coming out of the hospital with the twins, putting the twins into the back of the car, looking at my wife at the time going, what the hell?
That's it.
What the hell do we do? What the hell do we do now?
Now, Simon, you're furiously nodding along to that. So, are you implying, albeit subtly, you can relate to what Russ has just said?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no books. Certainly wasn't when I was a dad. You literally, did things on the hoof.
Yeah,
and,
completely.
You just learnt by trial and error. But something that Lord's brought up, which is really important, is the fact that men, particularly with children and particularly in the early stages as babies and so on, get ignored and get left out of the process. And I think, going back in our day, you just accepted that and said, yeah, that's part and parcel. But these days, a lot of men want to be included and are excluded in so many facets of bringing up children and so on. And that, this is not the only thing that the magazine and the website is there to help. It's actually to help men through their journey of being a man and all the issues that men face around mental health, well-being, racism, and so on. So that right the way through the stages, whether you're a partner or a husband or a father or just you as a person, at the end of the day, we focus on you as a person and all the things that can support you. Because if you're not the best version of yourself, you can't give the best to your kids. You can't give your best to your partner. You can't give your best to your workmates and so on and so forth. So it's really, at the end of the day, although there's a lot of advice around parenthood and things that are going on through parenthood, like we have one woman who is a breastfeeding specialist, and a lot of women struggle with breastfeeding, having kids. men don't understand the implications of that, what they're going through, how they feel about that. So we have an expert that can help men understand things like that, within the magazine, and it's going to be writing in that. So there's a lot of things covered, but it's really about men and actually putting them at the forefront of a situation rather than being pushed away from the situation.
It's interesting, isn't it, Simon? Because if you listen to some of the sort of the philosophy and the COD philosophy that floats around, it's like guys run everything and women are second-class citizens. But it's often the case that men are totally overlooked. And one of the things, and I'm sure Lord is the sort of living embodiment of this, the notion of the man's going out and earning the living and the little woman staying at home bringing up the kids is nonsense. That's finished. It's gone out with the dinosaur now. It's finished. It's over. You either got both, the dad's often at home and mum's out there, killing herself working, or they're both out there working and they've got to come to an arrangement between themselves, because most people, if they're not doing two jobs each because the world has gone raving mad, they're both trying to work. It ended with my dad's generation. Well, it should have done, and probably sneaked.
Well, I think you bring up a great point, Russ. But it's quite interesting between what the reality is and how people still think.
Oh, yes.
And I think this is a real challenge. So I think most people still think the man should be the breadwinner. The man doesn't need to, you don't have to worry about him because he's strong and he'll just deal with things and he'll get on with things and so on and so forth. Like the old-fashioned thinking is quite often still there today, albeit the men's role has changed quite significantly. And they're not it's not the same world as it was, but mentally.
Do you think there's anything wrong with people who hold on to that opinion that the man should be the breadwinner and that the mother should be the one who stays at home keeping family, if that's what the family unit want? What I find bizarre is when people seem to have a problem with it when the unit that is set up like that doesn't have a problem, if you see what I mean. But do you think there's anything wrong with it?
I agree with you, Phil. I think what I'm trying to say is this isn't about a particular unit where we agree as a family, I'm going to go out, earn the money, my wife's going to stay at home, bring up the kids and all that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever, right? Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think it's society as a whole having an impression about what's right and what's wrong. Everybody has the right to do what they want and to behave in a certain way. But if I am somebody, as Lord mentioned, this morning, there's an automatic assumption that me as a man shouldn't be involved in the baby, experience. The wife should be, and that isn't a chosen path by their family. That's just forced through society with their mentality saying that women are more important than men when it comes to this.
I think it should be one thing, though, that it's got to be a family by family decision. This is not one of those areas where you can just be prescriptive and say, this is how it's got to be. It's got to be agreed between, both the partners.
But I reckon most people wouldn't think. I reckon most people wouldn't have a problem with that. Where I think we go wrong is that it's sort of resorting to this default position. That's where I think we go. So going back to what Lord was saying earlier on about when he went to the hospital and had this checkup or what have you, and it was automatically assumed that it would be his wife who goes into that appointment. Where I think we go wrong is that there is this sort of default thinking, default thought processes in society which would make us think like that, and it's what's known as unconscious bias. And so what we're actually doing is we are being biased in our opinion, but we're not doing it deliberately. We're doing it because that's kind of how we've been brought up to think and what we believe we think. And I just wonder whether or not sort of is unconscious bias really that offensive, because I don't think it is, because it's never done with malice, is it?
I think,
Good point.
I guess it's a very interesting question, and I'm quite sure no malice intended. That said, I'm well aware that during and again we've just previously been through this, so I can talk from sort of fresh current experience. Is that women are screened for things like mental health concerns, for domestic violence at home. You know, there are those questions asked. You know, that there are forms to fill in by the health professionals who are looking after mum. Now, my wife and I attended every appointment together, and after my baby was born, we had some feeding difficulties. We had to go and take her weighed, and we took it in turns to attend the appointments. We would alternate so that we were both there, both involved, both hearing and saying the same sort of information. And I think that what is missed also is where men are not screened for things like mental health, domestic violence. It's assumed that, you know, somehow the man is, or the husband is going to be the perpetrator in every situation. Mental health screening is a massive you know, issue. There are plenty of dads who suffer with postnatal depression, and that's something that we're addressing in the first issue of the magazine. You know, there's a long way to go, I think, until dads are actually seen and heard and have got the right support around them, especially new dads and especially young dads. It's a minefield, you know, like you said earlier, Russ. You know, you get home with the babies and you think, right, what's next? There's no training manual, and what we're looking at is where's the support for the guys in that situation.
Two very interesting comments have come in, both of which reflect everything that you're doing with your new venture. This is from Paul Claridge. He's over in East Croydon, hopefully not getting beaten up. When my second son was stillborn in 2004, there was a lot of help, counselling, etc., available for mothers, but next to no help available for us dads. It's unacceptable. I get it. 2004 is a kind of a long while ago in many ways, yesterday in some ways, but horrible. Then Martin Allen, who follows the show religiously. Hi, Martin. This sounds perfect regarding what you and Simon have done. This sounds perfect for dad's life, etc. Helping absent dads, being family justice panel. I'll be looking forward to it. So there you go. So you know, I think
you talk about though is equality or inequality, to be more precise.
Sure.
Because before we were talking about with unconscious bias and the choices that I'm using as the example that you gave, Lord, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the only example, obviously. But the example you gave about the nurse who thought or assumed it would be your wife who would go into the appointment rather than you. But what I find really frustrating is that all of these words that one could describe as being attributed to the woke generation, such as inequality or equality, they never see it as a two-way street. There's just a one-track mind to equality, where it actually sort of points directly towards how terribly women are treated in this world. But actually, I've always said, for as long as I can remember, that there are always situations where men aren't treated that well either. In fact, probably, arguably, now more than ever, men aren't treated that well, as the world tries to try and reset, you know, tries to balance out the scales, where they're trying to get it right. So much so focus is on the fact that sort of there is inequality for women, certainly for people of different heritage, and yet now it's as if everything is to the detriment of men, in particular. I'm sorry, just saying it how I see it, white British men. You know, it's really interesting how sort of we've sort of forgotten that equality is a two-way street. Simon, you're furiously nodding along with that.
I think that this whole thing is across society in so many different facets of this, that we've gone to very much on the side of minorities, forgetting the majority's rights and you know, the views and access to, you know, support and so on and so forth. And I think this is again something that you know, we need to redress and actually recognize. Everyone is equal. Everyone should have access to the same things. Everyone should be treated the same. I know it's idealistic, but at the end of the day, at the moment, we've gone from sort of the majority that used to rule everything at the exclusion of the minority, and we're now at the minorities sort of having everything at the exclusion of the majority.
It's a slightly different subject, which I know is very, very central to the way Phil and I think, and it's why I'm always in a constant fury these days and have to sometimes come off social media because I can't stand it anymore. Today's wonderful example is that raving lunatic, God, Piers Corbyn on an underground train tearing off all the safety stickers. And I thought, what
saw
the
that before.
are you doing?
I
You
know,
idiot.
seriously.
You professional idiot.
He's
I mean,
unbelievable.
what
that chap.
is that? So his
And
view,
what's worse is people are giving him airtime. This is the
I
problem.
mean, he should just screw him. It's the whole thing. But also, it's, I think, a question that sort of overhangs what your venture is men now trying to find their place in the world. It's confusing because the world is going to go forward in one way. They will either look back on this period and go, the world went raving mad. What the hell was going on now? Or the other view is, which some of my pals say to me of my age, Russ, we had our day. This is the new reality. We just don't fit in anymore. I hope that's not true, because I think the new reality, some of these people are literally barking mad. I really think they're meant. I think genuinely they are really, and I say this as someone who's co-founded a mental health station, I think they're mentally ill. I've thought this for ages. I think they're seriously not well, some of these people, and they need help, but they don't see it, and they're supported by, I don't get it. It's just nuts. But men are trying to say, well, where do I fit in to all of this? What is the new landscape?
And that's something else, Russ, that we're looking to address. There's a lot of talk at the moment around sort of toxic masculinity, but then you've got issues surrounding men not really knowing where they fit. And I think especially when you become a dad, things like friendship groups drop off, hobbies and activities drop off, you become more isolated. You might be a young dad or a new dad, and there's an awful lot to kind of cope with. Men, I think, are either pushed out, as we've discussed before, or feel like they're excluded from certain things. Breastfeeding is a prime example. We've spoken to dads who say, well, my wife's breastfeeding, what can I possibly do? Or how
watch
do I bond
TV?
with my baby?
Get over it. What do you want to do?
Bottle
I don't
feed.
understand that. Lord,
Sorry.
I genuinely don't understand that. What would you like to do? A cabaret spot? Your wife's breastfeeding. You can't physically do that. What?
No, but I think it's about,
what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's about then addressing, men bonding with their babies and their children, and doing everything else sort of around to support and facilitate that activity. Yes, we can't physically do it. My wife is still breastfeeding now. We're 12 months in. And I'll rally around and I'll do the nappy change beforehand.
Yeah,
and,
there you go.
But it's about, I think, guys understanding what they can do and where they fit into all the parenting, because I think a lot of it is seen still as the responsibility of the mother. And we've got this sort of, are you hands off or hands on, or how involved do you need to be? So I think, there's a lot there.
You can apply logic to this. You can apply common sense to this. Your wife is breastfeeding. You can't do that. Despite what all the lunatics might say, you can't do it. Nature doesn't work like that. Okay? Any more than I can fly. You can't do it. So what can you do? You could do some housework. You could go make a nice cup of tea. Go make her a martini. I don't know. Go out and cook do the shopping. There's a billion things that are equally as valuable and as important in the relationship and the smooth running of the home, if you want to make it a 50-50 arrangement. But I think to open up the doors, I should feel guilty about this. I think it's a very dangerous path. We're meant to be feeling guilty about everything. Well, why? Why have we got to feel guilty about everything in the world? Stop it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's about, us feeling guilty about anything. I think it's just, guys, feeling a little bit lost sometimes along the way,
Yeah.
not having a sense of connection. And again, that's something that we're addressing through the website. Members will be able to access forums where they can chat to dads, in a safe space about these sorts of topics. Guys are struggling. Male suicide is a massive issue in the UK.
That's why we founded the station.
Yeah,
exactly. That was the starting point. That was the match that went on to the gasoline pile. The other thing, Lord and Simon, is that when you've been in a relationship with somebody and there's just the two of you and it's all lovey-dovey and marvelous, and suddenly along comes baby, and a lot of dads and mums as well don't realize that is the end of their life as they knew it. It's a completely new life. You will not be partying.
Yeah.
You will not be going out at the moment's whim. You will be tied to this little sausage who is completely helpless and relies on you 100%. And eventually, when they're about 45 years old, they go. But until that point, you're kind of stuck with them. And also the guys, are, I'm going to put this out there. It's probably an unpopular view, but I think it's true. Suddenly they think, wait a minute, I'm the third wheel here. There was me and my wife, or me and my partner, and suddenly this baby's come along. Where do I fit into this? And I think sometimes they feel jealous, which is crazy because it's your baby. I presume you wanted the baby, and you've got to readjust. This is a new life completely.
Yeah.
And guys have to understand that. And I'm sure you'll be covering that in both the website and stuff like that. But I get it. They're lost. What's my role now?
Yeah.
Jules Silverman says
dad.
Jules Silverman says, I understand what Lord is saying about bonding with the baby and having a connection, but just cuddle the baby, rock the baby, play with the baby. The bond comes between a baby and a mother through breastfeeding is also the cuddling. Just do that.
Yeah.
Precisely. It's not.
But you know what, RK? I think
that,
do you know what I think half the problem is that the very simple things are not actually spelled out anymore. So yeah, okay,
it's
maybe
too simple. It's too logical.
But even if it's too logical, half the problem is that all one hears about in this day and age is there's such inequality that men and women are treated differently. It's a disgrace. Everyone has to be treated the same. When the awful truth is there are some situations where it's just not possible. Yes, there are many situations where it is possible, but we also need to focus as sorry to use the S word again, as a society, we need to focus on what is not doable and say, you know what, it's okay, doesn't matter, get over it. There are some things that go your way, there are some things that don't go your way. That's life, but there's nothing wrong with that. You can't change that, and don't focus on it. Focus on what you can change. We don't say that often enough, and it's really annoying.
And Martin Allen, who's got a lot of experience in this department, Russ well said about a third wheel. Thanks, Martin. But you just step up support. And when baby gets to around 6 months, I found my children latched onto me just as much as the mother. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to ask both of you a question. And Lord, I'm going to start with you. This new landscape that they are trying to force upon us, of not having the words men and women and just saying chest feeding. I mean, all this complete bollocks, quite frankly. There we are. I've just summed it up. I think that's the view of most people who aren't mad. Is it confusing the issue? Is it helping the issue? What do you think, Lord?
I think there's a lot of new terminology, I think, that has emerged over the years, and I think it's confusing a lot of people. We've got a much more sort of mixed and open and diverse society than ever before, and I think we need to tread carefully, in the sense that there are, you've got trans parents, gay
Why
parents.
do we need, Lord, serious question. Why do we need to tread so carefully? They don't tread carefully with us. They just come in like stormtroopers.
I think it's just again about, you know, just respecting everyone's individuality and difference. You know, for us, you know, we're catering for, you know, for men and dads and men who care for children. You know, we want to look at the big brothers and the uncles and the granddads and, you know, all the other guys that are involved in child rearing as well. So you know, I think it's going to be interesting to see how we come out of this. I think COVID has actually created a little bit of a pressure cooker for many of these issues, and you know, there's still a lot of focus on, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know, and other issues.
Any other Marxist criminal activities you'd like to bring up?
No, I think it's just about, you know, being aware of what's going on, and you know, just for us as a company, making sure that, you know, we're addressing the issues, you know, the issues that men feel that they're facing currently, you know, and that is across the board, whether you know, whether the guy feels lost, you know, doesn't know where to turn, doesn't know what he's doing, where to go for help and support, you know, through to men reconnecting with their essence of masculinity. You know, there's that sort of animal instincts and all of those sorts of things, you know, that we'll be looking at. So again, we'll be addressing all of these sorts of topics in the issues of the magazine as they roll out, and we're very much interested to hear from people and their own personal experiences as well.
And the first one comes out on Father's Day.
Yeah,
it does.
Good. Sunday. Simon, where are you on this? How would you answer what?
Well, to me, we should celebrate the differences. You know, we're men. There's men, women, and we are different for different reasons. And I think the trouble with the society at the moment is trying to make us all as one, and not actually focus on, let's celebrate and get the best out of men, and let's celebrate and get the best out of women. Sorry, Phil, do you want to say something there?
Well, no, do you know what I was going to say, actually? It's curious you say
Never
that they're trying to make... You know what? It's curious that you say that society is trying to make us as one. I actually see it completely the opposite. I see that society, quote, is pigeonholing everyone. If only they did see everybody as one. That is where I think we go so drastically wrong. Anyway, look, we're already running over time. So before we completely run out, where can people find more information? Before we run out of time, I want to make sure we fit that in.
Go on, Lord.
Okay. So the website is just mandad.media. You can sign up to our mailing list, although the website does go live on Sunday. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. The first issue will be there. The first issue of the magazine will be available in the website. So if you want to have a look at the magazine, it's mandad.media.
I love this. Logan Blackburn Issett has just come up with www.mandad.media. Do you have to have a very fancy name to be part of your organization? Because Phil and I, obviously, we haven't got a hope. We could be like the doorman and security guard at your offices, but that would be it.
No, we need someone to make coffee, Russ. You got the job.
Oh, no, that's above my pay grade, mate. I could, make the hot water, but I can't coffee. I got to go for a 12-week training course on that. Then there's health and safety. I think this is a wonderful thing, and I think in many ways, first of all, we wish you every single luck and success. Secondly, I know that men's radio and women's radio are right behind you. Anything we can do to support you, I think it's a wonderful thing. I also think you guys have put your hands in a real hornet's nest, because we live in a world where whatever you do, somebody takes offense. And the fact they're even doing this, I know you're gonna get that, but you know what? It's worth it. It's worth it, because you guys are full of common sense, and ultimately, life, just apply a bit of common sense here, and life becomes much simpler. But
Now, Lord, I have to ask you: is your better half called Sarah or Sarah?
Sarah.
Sarah, right? Okay.
Sarah Michelle de Laurentiis.
Just putting it out there, Sarah. I am no expert when it comes to social media, but even I know that there are limits of around 240 characters, and the hashtag "Get Ready Something Really Cool Is Coming" might be a little too long for some tweets, but other than that, love it.
No, hang on. She's American. She's American. That is short.
Oh,
American.
you're telling me? Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
mate. I know. I used to live there. Trust me.
It's been really a great. It really has been great
American
fun.
woman say, "Hi, how are you?" 20 minutes later, you finished getting the answer.
Yeah.
It really has been great fun talking to you, gents. And I can only hope that you'll come back and chat to us again soon.
Yeah, we will.
We wish you all the very, 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 very best. And Lord, it's the first time we've actually had a guest who's been broadcasting from Middle Earth.
There you go.
We haven't had that before. It's been great. It's been great.
Thank you both.
All the very
much.
best. Good luck with the launch on Sunday. Fabulous idea.
Mandad.media. Thank you both very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Lovely guys.
Terrific.
What charming guys. And what a damn good idea.
It's a great initiative.
Great
Love it. And it
initiative.
certainly is right up our street here, isn't it?
It's a lovely initiative. I hope we're going to be doing more. Simon and I we were introduced by a mutual friend. We've had nice Zoom calls and chat and everything. And he's a charming man. I hadn't met Lord before. And I wish them all the very best. It's a terrific idea. You know, it brings up so many blooming issues, though, doesn't it? It brings up if people would stop making stuff up. We want to celebrate individuality and celebrate, whoever you fall in love with, whatever. It's absolutely fine. And to be honest, Sen, we dealt with that at the beginning of the show. You're obsessed. We're talking about really important issues, and all you're kvetching on about is Phil's gloves. Phil is in another location. When he's in other locations, he always wears cotton gloves for health and safety, and for
just for hygiene, because that's
all it is.
I'm in a common area, as it were. And I don't mean common. I don't mean common as in
that, mate.
I don't mean
common than we're here.
I don't mean common as in that you'd find on East End.
No, it's common. Sen, you'd feel right at home there, Sen. Love it, mate. I have to put my marigolds on, Sen?
Well, quite.
I didn't even know you took your marigolds off. Phew, that's a worry.
It's common in the sense that there are many people who use it, and I feel somehow it is better for me. It's also better for others around me as well, if I am at least doing something to try and limit any spread of any germs.
Anyway, and
as exciting as that,
he's doing his Alvin Stardust impression, because he's going straight on as an Alvin Stardust impersonator after the show. Look, what I was saying is this: I just want to kind of try and get this across. Whatever you do in your private life, I don't care. You're Rose and Fred West, obviously, then I do care. But outside of that, it doesn't affect me. It's none of my business. Do what the hell you want to do. It's absolutely fine.
But actually, RK, this is the point, is that most people don't care about others. Now, that's not to say in a horrible way.
They're not to say that they're uncaring.
It means that they don't need to worry about what you're up to. They're quite preoccupied with their world. And what I'm getting a little bit tired of is everyone who sort of seems to be in the charge of the woke brigade, who turns around and says in no uncertain terms, you must love everyone around you no matter what. Well, actually, no, you mustn't love everyone around you.
I don't love everyone who's around me.
You have got the right to realize that other people have got the right to exist and to live their life in the world they want to live. That's fine. But stop telling other people that they are wrong for thinking the way they do. This is what the major
this is where it's all going crazy. This is where it's all going crazy. I think, history will look back and think, I think the world went mad for 5-10 years. And eventually, that old phrase, the silent majority, will just rise up and say, we've had enough of this shit. You are a tiny minority, bullying, yelling, screaming, carrying on like raving lunatics. We've had enough of this. Now we're going to push back. And that goes along with my feeling that nature abhors a vacuum. and certain things are going on.
But
And
you know
if-
what's interesting as well, though, is as soon as anyone speaks out in the way that you and I are speaking out now, is that we would be accused of being agitators, of being racist, of being
Nazis.
foul.
We'd be Nazis.
But this is my humble is that it's not about being any of the above. It's simply about saying, but I don't think like that, and I don't want to feel like that, and there's nothing wrong with it. At the very, very least, everyone has a right to an opinion, and you have to respect that opinion. I know they don't, but you have to, because it's the only way we're going to get by in this world. Otherwise, there's going to be forever battling.
I know what I was trying to say is this: there's these two guys, there's Lord and Simon Warman-Fried. Yes, as in Warman-Fried, the chemist, and though he's not involved with that, and they're trying to sort out and help men with regard to being dads, etc. Either you believe there are men and women, or you believe there's like 27,000 different variations of that. I don't see how that helps. I actually genuinely, I want to get a guess on. I'm going to ask James Dreyfus to come on because he gets trolled every day. I genuinely, I'm not pretending not to understand, which I always find very irritating, rather immature. I don't understand the issue. I've never understood. I don't understand it. And it's not being old-fashioned. It's like saying, well, the earth is flat. Well, the earth isn't flat. The earth is round. It's like saying, we can, if we want to, we can all fly. Well, we can't fly. Well, you can jump off a building and fly for a few seconds. You can't fly. It's not possible. The earth isn't flat. It isn't. And so I just wonder why they think these arguments are in any way helpful, because it is a tiny minority. If you look at the way the media is skewed, you think we are the tiny minority and everybody else agrees with them. They are literally a tiny minority, but they're very loud, they're very angry, and they're bullies. Ed Grossman makes an absolutely hugely valid point, and it is my big fear. Russ, the fear is that the minority will become the majority. That's the way to civil war. And the problem is, what I was going to say earlier, but Phil was making another point, is this: nature abhors a vacuum. It just does. And if the authorities, the people that we have given the power and permission to carry out the law, don't do that, if they don't do that, other people will. And you don't want that, because that is the road to absolute chaos.
The bottom line is chaos. The bottom line is that it's whether it is the minority who think it or not. If you say something enough times, people will start to believe it. And this is where it actually can become quite dangerous, because it's tantamount to indoctrination.
It is indoctrination. It's a religion. It's a fanatic religion.
Up until now, I would say now, up until the last couple of years anyway, what we have experienced by and large is people may wholly disagree on many different points, but the bottom line is that people had their different points of view, and they debated them, they discussed them, they argued them out. And whether they agreed or not was almost neither here nor there. In fact, actually, it was encouraged because it was healthy. It was good. It was really, really good to have a healthy debate. Yeah. But now, for anyone to turn around and say you are wrong for thinking or feeling the way you do, how dangerous is that? Nothing to do with breaking into civil war. I mean, that's a whole argument in itself. But I think from the point of view that when someone assumes that another individual is that capable of controlling their emotions and controlling their feelings, what does that do to an individual's self-esteem when they are told you are wrong for feeling the way you feel? It breaks them.
How would you have felt? We've got some marvellous comments. Stephen Marsh, accountant to the stars. Ed, sadly and dangerously, it is happening before our very eyes in relation to religion. Absolutely. Yeah. Ed Grossman again. Russ, like you, many of us don't get the issue. Now, I'm not trying to be thick about this. I genuinely do not understand what they're talking about half the time. Like you, many of us don't get the issue. That's because the wokes they do. They just invent stuff. They invent stuff that simply isn't real. And then you're told it is real. And I think that's why half of us think we're going around the bend. Sen, thank you for that. I still love you, Russ, no matter what you are. Animal, mineral, kebab, Welsh. You were going so well until the last bit. Martin Allen, Russ, it's the latest fad. Can't disagree. Back in the 80s, everyone wanted an XR3i. I had one. I had a white turbo XR3i. It was awful. But we all didn't buy one. I sold it. And the person, and it was fine. I sold it to a garage, and then it caught fire on the M4. They were driving it back to Wales, probably back to Sen Munro. It was a horrible car to drive. Looked quite nice at the time. It was nasty to drive. You had so much scrabbling, front wheel drive. It was all over the bloody place. I honestly, I don't get it. But the thing about this radio station and women's radio station is we can have an open and honest chat. We're not telling you what is right or wrong. You're all grown-ups. You're over 21. Make your own mind up. We're just having a conversation without everyone screaming. Phil, let me ask you this: you're actually more hardcore than I am. People will think it's the other way around, but you actually are in many ways. You've got the cheeky little boyish smile, but I know you better.
I know deep down I'm a swine. I know.
Yeah, he's much more hardcore than you think. Trust me. And it's not an act. This is how he is. But, you push him and you never know what you're going to get, right? But I have a point. It's interesting that you can push and push. And then when I reach a certain point, I lose it completely. I mean, when I say lose it, I mean totally out of control. I mean, out of control. You do not want to be there. And I admit that. It hasn't happened for many,
incredible Hulk all of a sudden.
Oh, it is. It hasn't
It
happened for many years. But when I do go, it's scares myself actually. Anyway,
it's more like the Incredible Sulk.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't know. No, it's very interesting. I know you can do that, guy. What I was going to say is this: if you were sitting on the tube today, and that freaking idiot Corbyn, the brother, not the other one, came in and started tearing off from the tube carriage the plea, you have to wear a mask. What would you have done? It's a serious question. Hi, Linda. It's a serious question. Have you died? What's the matter? You're not answering?
No, sorry, I didn't hear what the question was.
If you were sitting on the tube.
Oh, I see. What would I have done? Oh, right.
That idiot Corbyn came in and started tearing off the posters. What would you have done? I
don't think I would have done very much.
Would you have
at the point? Something? No. I don't think I would have done very much at the point of where he's going around the carriage and taking. I tell you what I would have done is I would have had a right old go at the slob of an assistant he had with him, who was leaning over people as he wasn't wearing a mask, leaning over people to remove stickers as well. Then I probably, then I would have gone absolutely.
What right?
I would not be very happy with that.
What right has this self-appointed idiot got to do that? The laws have been laid out, but London Transport are doing all they can to keep us safe under difficult, very difficult circumstances. Why? What gives this arrogant bastard the right to do this? Why?
Yeah, I think Ed raises a very valid point where he says he would have called the transport police.
I'd have called the police as well. What would they have done? Would they have taken the knee? Would they have actually acted on it? Who the bloody hell knows? See, this is what's scary. This is what is frightening. And it's a Kafkaesque situation. The Kafkaesque nightmare is that you have a problem. And this is Franz Kafka's point. And you go to the authorities, and the authorities are also part of the problem and don't believe you, and they're as equally evil as the people perpetrating the problem. That is my worry, that you would go, like Ed would say, like I would do, go to the police, and they'd go, yeah, what do you want me to do? Well, I want you to act because you're the damn police.
Now, our next guest is waiting very patiently in the digital green room. But just before we go to our next guest, Chrissy has said, Phil, I keep hearing the word woke. Please explain this to me. Well,
very good question. You're not being silly, Chrissy. Good question.
No. The definition of woke, by the way, is quite misunderstood a lot of the time. First and foremost, it's not the past tense of wake. And secondly, I would stress that the current definition appears to be, or the most reasonable definition appears to be, the act of being very pretentious about how much you care about a social issue.
It's just shit.
So, in
It's
other
not
words,
shit.
those who have some sort of be in their bonnet about some social issue, which may, for the record, be perfectly justified, just for the record, may be perfectly justified. It's the
Really?
pretentiousness surrounding it, as if somehow they're some sort of demigod. That's what
And that
annoys
you're
me.
an idiot and they're geniuses. You
And
are
that's
a
what
nobody.
annoys.
You're a Nazi bastard, and we're saints.
Anyway,
It goes along with a gentler. I'm laughing because I'm angry. And my daughter would tell, there was a point when she was a little girl, and she said, when dad starts to laugh in a certain way, you really know you're going to get it. Well, yeah, Ed, totally.
Right.
Yes.
It is time.
What I was going to say is this. It goes along, the woke thing is this. It goes along with a gentler kind of politics. And then you see the trolling and the disgusting comments. You go, oh, that's gentle and that's kinder. You hypocritical twerps. Enough.
This is Men's Radio Station. It is the Daily Show with him, Russ Kane, and with me, Phil Dave. And you'll be delighted to hear that we are live. This fuming, we are live until 2:00 this afternoon, and we've still got great guests still to come. But it's
guests coming up.
time for us now, as we are live across Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, mensradiostation.com, Radio Waves, and Deluxe Radio.
Speaking of which, Deluxe and Radio Waves, I actually met with the big cheese of Deluxe. I met with David Wimble yesterday. We had a face-to-face, proper grown-up meeting.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you met in Godminster. Right, let's have...
with the cheese.
Let's have... Let's meet John.
I'm overexcited about my cheese development.
Let's speak to John Keel now, who joins us on the Daily Show. John, a very good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's good morning here, Phil.
I was going to say, actually, I'm very sorry. Actually, I need to say good morning to you, really, don't I? Because you're in Ohio, are you not?
Eastern time zone, 5 hours behind you or ahead of you, I guess.
No, you are behind us by 5 hours. Good Lord.
Wow. So what is it, 7:00 in the morning there?
7 a.m., yes.
Wow. Well, good morning to you, John. Thank you so much for getting up so bright and breezy in Ohio.
Well, it's an everyday thing for me, Russ. I get up around 4 or 5 every morning.
Oh, good work. I knew I was with a kindred spirit. Excellent. That's good news.
There's a 4 or 5 in the morning? Wow.
4 or 5 before the sun comes up, yes.
John, I'm with you all the way, sir. I get up at 2:30 in the morning, so bring it on. Absolutely. Right now, John, you are here for a very important reason, because you have been, well, I feel like I don't want to tell everyone what you've achieved, because actually I feel like I'd be stealing your thunder. How long have you been doing what you've been doing, and what are you doing?
Well, I've been in business, total business, over 45 years. But this is a second career for me, what I do now. I sold my first business in 1995 to save my family, and got involved in the internet when there were only 72,000 websites in the world.
Wow. Oh, God.
But I am not Al Gore. I did not invent it.
So your website number 72,001.
Well, something like that, yes.
Excellent.
That's fantastic.
So what is it that you do? Tell us.
Well, my main consulting business that I've done for the last 24 years, I work with 1 to 30 million in revenue businesses and increase their revenue.
We love you straight away. we like. Do you work with businesses that are worth about £15.75p? That's it. If you could work with us, that would be great. Bring us up to 20 quid. We'd be thrilled.
Hilarious.
Right. Russ, I don't work with startups anymore. Did that have the T-shirt for that, but don't do that anymore.
I bet you do. I bet you do. Ohio is. I'm so sorry. I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but I'm just fascinated because we've got somebody coming in from Dubai later. Ohio is a state that not many people sort of talk about, do they? It's kind of like almost a forgotten, everyone goes, oh, California, oh, New York, oh, Florida. It's all very exciting. But, there are huge states that people just never know much about. Ohio, I would say, is probably one of them.
Yeah, we're part of that strong Midwest.
Yes. Yeah. Is it true that there is a real Midwest mentality? There is a culture which is specific to the Midwest? It's very different from the rest, from the coastal states, isn't it?
It's like two different countries, really.
Completely, yeah, I get that. We've got lots of messages. It's interesting. Chrissy Holt, who lives watching this from Spain, man of my own heart, I love Ohio. And Glassy Amanda, who's in the therapeutic community, says Ohio is a wonderful state. So there we are. It's really that's really good.
Now, John, when you say that you help people try and increase their revenue, how do you go about doing that? Because obviously you'd be forgiven for thinking you're on Men's radio station. We talk about mental health and well-being. So how on earth do you go about improving revenue, and why are you here?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I talked to a friend of mine not years, but months ago, and he says, you need to be on Men's radio station. I said, cool. The two cool guys, the Phil and Russ.
Well, one cool guy. And
well, I was going to say, sadly,
somebody wears gloves.
Sadly, they weren't available. But anyway.
Well, Russ, I relate to you. They call me the old dog with new tricks. That's my nickname that's been given.
I love that. I love that.
Excellent work.
That's fantastic.
Back to your question, Phil, because I'm asked that a lot of times. How do you do that? I said, well, yeah, I've been involved in business for a number of years, and not most, but I just did a survey recently that said that 30% of businesses today are struggling, or their revenue is flat or down. Others are going better, and I'm glad for them. So I work with those folks who are struggling, and there are a myriad of reasons why this happens. My consulting business last year did a downturn because of the shutdown. I don't call it the pandemic; I call it the shutdown, where we could not go out for a while. We still did, but legally weren't supposed to. But I guess I just learned so much stuff over the last 25 years, many techniques, and I was just talking with a new client in France yesterday, and he said, so let's get specific about these things that you're doing. I said, fine. I said, understand that most people get all excited about the newest techniques. For example, social media. I remember when Google Ads came out, 20 years ago, everyone was really excited about them. There are techniques, and then there are principles. Principles never change.
John, what I was thinking is that actually, when anyone actually thinks that, hang on a second, this sounds like a very business type conversation, and on a radio station that deals primarily with men's mental health and well-being, or just people's mental health and well-being, what on earth has this got to do with it? But actually, there is a real argument to be had that if one's working environment is unnecessarily stressful, it can have the most shocking impact on the individual. So do you see yourself as a kind of a savior of people in that way without realizing it?
Well, much so, but it is intentional, Phil. That's a great question, because I find that the thing that gets in most people's way is the 6 inches between their ears. It's how they think or how they don't think.
It's a very funny night out.
I love that.
It's so true.
I love that. People are making notes all over the world, John. People are making notes of some of your brilliant phrases. Old dog with new tricks. And then what gets in the way is the 6 inches between your ears.
It's what's going to be known as, from now on, taking the keel.
Taking the keel. This is it. Oh, very good.
But going back to your point, Phil, for the first, 42 years of my life, and I'm 74 now and loving every minute of what I do. Don't see myself ever retiring. But for the first 42 years of my life, as I share with people, I knew there was a God. I just didn't know it wasn't me. I had a very high opinion of myself.
Great. John, in that regard, I've already got my headstone for when I eventually go, which will be who is the world going to revolve around?
I love it.
Headstone.
Yeah, I'm with Spike Milligan when he said, "I told you I was sick."
But that, and I had a very successful business in my first career, if you will. As I said, made a lot of money, spent a lot of money, and had a miserable relationship with my wife and my kids. Almost lost my family through that whole thing. And that's when I decided to make the change. I did 180 degrees, sold that business, and the rest, as they say, is history. I'm just making history as I go on, but it's really all about our thinking.
How did you get to the point, if you don't mind me asking, but you're being
sure.
you're being very open. How did you get to the point where you thought, yeah, I'm what the world would call successful, but in my life and the things that matter, my wife and kids, I'm probably not as successful. How did you get to the point? How were you brave enough to do the 180 that you've just described?
Well, Russ, I just celebrated my 49th anniversary last week.
Blimey, well done.
And
how lovely.
Thank you. And every day's been perfect. Not really.
Of course. Yes, of course. It's a bowl of cherries. We know that.
But to answer your question, after we'd been married 17 years, Colleen, my wife, good Irish girl, just said, are we going to make it? And she said, we said until death do us part. And if you keep behaving the way you're behaving, yours is fast approaching.
yours is on its way.
Yeah. And she's a very thoughtful person.
Yeah.
And much like you were saying earlier, as I was listening to you all, but when you get to that point, look out. And I had reached that point with her. And so we were actually separated for about 3 months. And
wow.
Physically separate, I moved out for 3 months. Yeah, but I knew deep down that we'd get it all fixed. I just didn't know all the changes I'd have to go through. And the turning point for me was working with a psychologist, because we have counselors. And I share this story openly now, so it doesn't hurt like it did when I heard it. After I'd met with him a couple times, he said, I'll take your case. He says, quite frankly, you're Academy Award winning material. He says, you are unfit for human consumption. And that got my attention. And the true was, and it was true. I was pretty bad boy.
Was it because you were so wrapped up in the business and pursuit of money that you'd become a monster, or like what? Because you seem because we've chatted before. You seem such a charming guy. It's hard to envisage.
The people that I've run into who knew me 25, 30 years ago don't recognize me. Seriously, I'm that different. But I remember as a little kid, because my dad was in the Air Force, so we moved around every 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. We're never in one place in a long time. And I remember when I was a small boy, probably 10, 11, having a conversation with myself. I wonder if they really know me, will they like me? I had a very low self-image.
John, I don't wish to dig deep, because you can tell me to mind my own business, but this is just the way this show works. But when you say that you moved around a lot, what does that do to a person, out of interest? Because I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I lived for the first 32 years of my life in the same town in northwest London. We moved, but we lived in the same town. And now that we've moved as a family, we've moved precisely 5-10 minutes away from where we used to live. So honestly, moving around to me is completely foreign. But the thought of moving around every couple of years, I reckon that could actually have a deep impact on somebody, possibly without even realizing. Was that the case?
I think it really does, Phil, because you never really get to know people at a deeper level. And because we moved around so much, I had very surface level relationships with everybody I met. And because I wondered if they'd really like me, if they knew me, I never went any deeper than that. And that sucks, quite frankly.
Why did that bother you? It's a really interesting question to ask oneself. But why, John, did that bother you? If they'd like you, if they really knew you?
That's a tremendous question. And I grew up in a nuclear family. My mom and dad never, we were always together. I had 2 younger sisters. And I was always affirmed positively. So there was a lot of love in our house.
Yeah.
And I think it was just some wires somewhere that got me. I didn't really, it wasn't that I disliked myself, it's that I didn't like myself. And so I was.
What's the difference?
Well,
if you don't like yourself, you're kind of disliking yourself, aren't you? A bit.
Well, I don't know that I actively disliked myself, although the way after we were married a couple times, it happened after married once. But after several years, Colleen would say, I can't be in the same room with you because when you talk to yourself, you'd never talk to your worst enemy the way you talk to yourself. I had a lot of negative self-talk.
Now, hang on just a second. Hang on.
Very,
That's profound. That's so profound. Say again, you'd never talk to your worst enemy the way you talk to yourself. But surely everyone's their own worst critic, right?
Well, oh, sure, because we were in the comparison game all the time. Because all we see from other people is what they choose to show us, but we know ourselves deep down.
Mm.
And that's why and through that process, by the way, of the change, I got out of the comparison game, because that's a game you'll never win when you compare yourself to other people. Ever. You'll never win that game.
It's a very dangerous game to play. Way that I play that, John, is that I don't watch much TV. I watch a lot of documentaries, and I look at people who are in their own field very successful. And I look at it and I thought, what has made them? And it's not about the money. It's about the success. And it's not about the ego or the fame. It's what has made that particular person very successful. One is they're all driven. But 2 is they work damn hard. They just work hard. And when they get knocked back, they get up, brush themselves down, don't moan and groan about it, and they just they get back on the horse, so to speak. I find that very interesting. So that's the only comparison I would do, because I'm not going to be, Elon Musk. I'm not going to be, thank God, Richard Branson and whatever. I'm never going to be like the great Neil Peart and drum like he could. But it's like, what did they do? And they all took the time to learn. I think they all took that time out.
Key point, Russ. I'm a continual learner. And in fact, I had a conversation yesterday. My learning curve, and here I am 74 years old, my learning curve is vertical.
It's fantastic.
And as I heard this once, is if all you do is increase 1%, all you do is get 1% better each day due to the natural law of compounding, in a year, you'll be 38 times better. Just 1% a day. And so that's sort of a goal I've had for years, is just to continue to read and continue to learn to get better in some way.
It's really interesting. You're 74? 74, yeah. Right. First of all, you look fantastic.
Well,
that sounds patronizing. It's not meant to be patronizing.
I take it.
But, the thing is, and this is something also to do with mental health. If you go, well, it's over, I'm done, I'm an old guy, and blah, 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 you will look older, you'll think older, people will look at you as older, and they'll just say, well, he had his time, and that's it. Age, I'm not going to do that age is just a number. I don't believe that. We have physical changes. I can't do all the crazy stuff I used to do, much as I might like to, but it nearly kills me now. We accept that, but up here, as long as you're willing to learn and get excited by what each day might bring, it's great.
I totally agree with you, obviously, and I believe that's part of. My dad lived to 94, my mom to 93, and they were good models for me because he kept learning, kept reading. He got into computers when he was in his 60s, and actually had an internet newsletter when he was in his 70s and 80s.
But you know what? That kind of can-do attitude really, really stands out a mile from those who just grow complacent with life. I think if one has the ability to look life in the eye and say, do you know what? Yeah, this is nice, but it could be better. And I'm going to find out how much better it could be. That is so unbelievably good. It sounds hippie. It sounds like I'm hugging a tree. I'm not. I'm just saying it how I see it. I think that is really good for the soul. I think that is really good for an individual, for their development and for their ability to actually stay as on top of life as they possibly can. The problem is, if something becomes too much like autopilot, then your brain doesn't have to function anymore. And if your brain doesn't have to function, it can go a horrible way. Sadly, I think that sort of one of us in particular within this sort of group knows only too well. And it's the point is that there are ways that we can try and combat what aging can potentially do to us, but people have got to be brave enough to do it. And it sounds like your family have got some superb genes going on there.
Yeah, and I like jeans too. I wear them all the time. But
you beat me to it. You beat me to the gag.
But I think
it's like that's why an upset stomach's hereditary. It runs in the genes.
All gets you back to the attitude. You guys are fine.
I can't believe you said that, Phil.
What?
No, don't even go there. I'm not repeating it. If everyone got it, they got it. John, the success of a business is, I mean, obviously you have to have a good business model. You have to put all the things in place that are going to make the business grow, etc. But there's a lot of having the right mentality as well. I would have thought it's not just saying I've got a new widget. Oh, this is great. I'm going to bring it to market. Boom, off it goes. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
Yes, there is. There's an awful lot to it. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult to be quote successful in business. And I've had ups and I've had downs. And as you were saying earlier, you just get up and start over. I've had some start overs, over the last 24 years.
Mm.
But you recognize that that's not very easy for everyone to do. I mean, you say get up and start over. And I don't even necessarily think it's easy for those who are brave enough to try it. But to most people, I would imagine, certainly from conversations I've had with folk, it is quite hard to just turn around at one stage and say, right, that's it. I'm going to completely change the course of my life.
It is, Phil, and at the same time, I think it goes back to the attitude. And as I've had some, not massive business failures, but some hard times, that doesn't define me as who I am as a person. That's an event. That happened. So get over it. Be mature.
How do you, now this is a very important thing. I don't normally give personal examples, but I will in this instance, just to show that for me, it's not simply theoretical. I went into a business. I thought it was going to be great. It was the worst business decision I've ever made. It was an absolute and total disaster. But worse, what it did to me up here, it was shocking. And I still have 3 a.m, 4 a.m things where I start to beat myself up and I go, well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's been and gone. The money's gone. You made a huge mistake, and the trouble is I kept doubling down on it, thinking it was going to be okay, and it wasn't. And I just stopped the whole thing. We got rid of it. We sold everything off, and that was it. But how do you up here get yourself back? Because as Phil says, it's not easy, but it has to be done, because otherwise you're stuck there, and that was the last thing I wanted, and I won't allow that.
Again, a great question. I mean, part of it, quite frankly, comes from my faith life, and that was one of the big changes that happened when I was 42. At the same time, though, the issue that I had, and I'd see a lot of people have, I was carrying a lot of anchors, past failures, past things I had done wrong, bad decisions I had made. Those are so heavy. Yeah. It's hard to move forward, and without getting rid of them, just throwing them off, and saying that's really not who I am as a person. I have certain basic qualities that are important, and that are my values and my things that are important to me, and those things don't define me. Those mistakes I've made, those decisions I've made, the people I associated with, and some associating with wrong people, quite frankly.
Totally.
See, I quite
tell you
like the
what,
people who
sorry.
have the attitude of there is no such thing as a mistake. There are learning curves. That's what I
No,
quite like.
I made a mistake. I made a terrible mistake. It was.
And you learn from it, though.
It was an experience.
It was a horrible experience, but it was a huge experience that cost me emotionally deeply. I tell you what I liken that to, John. You were calling them anchors. Quite often how I think about Phil. Oh no, he said anchors. Sorry. Come on, it had to be done. You knew it. You were waiting for it, Phil. Is this? There was a film some years back called The Mission, and in it was Robert De Niro, and it was set in sort of the 1400s or the 1500s when the conquistadors go into South America. It's a very famous film.
I remember the movie.
Robert De Niro is trying to atone for his former life as a pretty bloodthirsty mercenary. And they're climbing this very difficult path, physically going up a mountain. And De Niro's character is dragging his incredibly heavy armor with him, which he sees as his penance for his past life. And eventually one of the other characters says, you know, we're not going to make it to the top like this, and you're punishing yourself. And De Niro, in a wonderful scene, just gets his sort of knife and he cuts the rope, and the armor and all this weight falls down the mountain, and he can continue his journey. And that, I've only seen the film once, and that's always stuck with me and had a huge influence on the way that I think. Much like you were saying with getting rid of the anchors, it's like, if you're dragging all this stuff, you're never going to make the progress, either financially or much more importantly, up in your head than you could. It's pointless. There's no point to it. The only person you're punishing is yourself.
You know, Russ, it's almost like I'm a helium balloon, and as long as I have weights attached to my balloon, I can't go up in the air. But when I cut the rope, I can go high.
Yeah.
That just came to me. I'm going to remember that.
That's a good one. Write that one down. That's it. But it is true, isn't it? It's true in the people that you associate with. It's true in the toxicity of the relationship, whether they're personal relationships or business relationships. You know, you've said working with the wrong people, which we've all done. We've said, why did we ever get into bed with those people financially? You know, they were horrible people. I didn't enjoy being with them. And you get to a stage in life, you think, I don't need that, because it's never going to be right. You can't fix that. You know, it's not fixable.
Yeah, and that thing about relationships, I heard, and I didn't write this, but somebody I heard years ago said, just look at your five closest relationships. And they were talking more about business. But the 5 people you hang out with the most, average their income, yours is probably right in the middle. And in many cases, as I've discovered over the years, others are not, for the most part, excited about our success. Because when we're successful in some way, it forces them to look in a mirror and look at themselves. And I can remember being making a lot of money when I was in my early 30s. And we had to move on our street because of the comments that people made to my kids and to my wife. You think you're better, blah, blah, blah. And we just didn't need that, because we were forcing people to look at themselves and say, why aren't you more successful?
See, it's fascinating you say that, because if you just joined, John Keel's coming live from Ohio. And there's always been an understanding that, and it was summed up like this, you know, if you get a British worker and an American worker, if a British worker standing by the factory, this is an old-fashioned idea. All right, but just go with me for a sec. If the British workers standing by the factory gates and the owner of the business drives out in a very nice car, they go, the bastard, look at him in his flash car. And in America, if he drives out in a Cadillac, they go, one day I'm going to drive out in a Cadillac. And that was always, I thought, the difference in many ways between the American mentality, that can-do mentality, and the British, no, we're going to drag you down to our level because you're successful mentality. So I'm really surprised that you're saying you had to move when you made.
Oh yeah, it just and I've heard the old story of the crabs. If you want to if you go crabbing, if you get one crab and put it in a barrel or a bucket, it'll get out. But if you put 2 in, or 3 or 4, the other crabs will reach up and pull the crab that's trying to get out down. And if that crab continues to try, they'll kill it.
Is that true?
It's a good story. I don't know.
It's a great story. I have no idea.
I really don't know, but I've seen that. And so I remember Zig Ziglar. I'm a big fan of his. Saw him speak several times, but I remember his saying one time, always share give-up goals, but never share grow-up goals. In other words, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to quit smoking. That's a give-up goal. But I'm going to move to a bigger house or whatever. In terms of a grow-up goal, people will not be happy for your success. I mean, I had that happen to me in my first business when I made the decision that I was going to leave. I was the owner. I was the vision of the company, and unfortunately I announced it to the people that were there, and the next 5 years were pure hell.
It's really strange you say that, though, because actually I do what jealousy, I think, is one of the most vile emotions. Seriously, such a vile emotion. What it drives people to do is unbelievable, and yet we're all capable of it. This is what's so scary. Everyone's capable of jealousy, and I know for myself the number of times that I look, and I've brought this up a lot on this show, so I'll keep it brief because I don't really want to bore people with the same thing, but the number of times I see people who have managed to make, I don't know what it's like in Ohio, John, but over here in London, it's very difficult for those who are single, who are, I say young professional, do me a favor, mid-30s already, but you know what I mean, those who are
34,
young.
We haven't started.
Those who are young professional to get onto the housing ladder here in London, it's very, very difficult. And I see other people who are younger than me who have achieved this. Now, I know there are loads of different methods of how they've done it, but there's always at the back of my mind a little bit of the green-eyed monster that thinks, how have they done it? And I haven't. This is unbelievable. Exactly the same way in my career, I see people who are far more successful at what I do than me in my career. And I think, why not me? Why not me? And of course,
that's the word talent.
Maybe
you're missing the word talent from that. You see, there you go.
I see what it did, but no. But in all seriousness, what some people do is some people use that so-called jealousy and they turn it into a driving force to help them improve and actually get what they want. They might be a bit slower than others, but they still use it as a real force of nature to actually for their advantage. But it's amazing how those who've got no ability to do that just let it consume them, and it turns them into really the most vile people.
I've seen that.
It's
also.
a horrible trait. I know I'm many things and I have a billion faults, but the one thing I do know is I'm not a jealous person. I'm not. If somebody's hugely successful with merit, I salute them. I think, fantastic. I really do. I admire in whatever field it might be. I think that's great.
And Russ, that's very freeing up to be able to get to that point. Again, it's one more anchor you don't have to carry around.
It's true, but this whole thing. There's a very good point coming in from Edinburgh, which I know you're in Ohio. That's in Scotland, John.
I know where Edinburgh is.
Just pointing it out, just in case you thought it was a suburb of London. And Americans and geography, 2 words you never hear in the same sentence. Veronica Curran says this is up in Edinburgh. So it's the self-worth thing again. I think that's the central core almost of this conversation, which is why I was so keen to have you as a guest. It's the self-worth thing again, and also learning how we control in a healthy balance our mind health. So, because without that, you're screwed.
No, I totally agree. And that was really the big change for me in my 40s. It was a 10-year process for me, by the way. Once I made the decision to change, developing that sense of self-worth. And I love myself today. I think you know what I mean when I say that. But I have a good opinion of myself, an honest opinion of myself. And that's so key to have that good self-image and to speak words that confirm that.
That's my life goal. I'm absolutely serious. That is my life goal, to reach that point that you're at. I'm not sure I will ever do it. I try, but I don't ever think I'm going to reach that point where I can be satisfied with how I see myself. That's the honest truth. That's about as honest as I ever get on this show. That's the naked truth about it. It's like, you love yourself. I don't think I'll ever say that about myself, ever. I think Phil suffers from the same thing, actually. I don't think Phil is gone remarkably quiet, but I think you've really hit kind of a nerve with the two of us, because neither of us would say, "Oh yeah, we love ourselves." We don't.
No, look, I think what I think it is I don't necessarily say that I love myself, because I don't believe it's down to me to love myself. I think I am more happy with myself than many people are happy with themselves, in the sense that I accept this is as good as it gets. And I don't say this is as good as it gets. Actually, that's not right at all. But you know what I mean? This is what I've been given to work with, if you see what I mean. So I don't mean it's as good as it gets. I mean that this is what I've got to work with. There are some things I can change. There are some things I can't change. And I am not going to dwell on the things I can't change, because there's no blooming point. Yeah. Do I like the fact that I have, say, a receding hairline? Absolutely no, I do not. And it troubles me greatly, but I can't change it. I mean, I could probably buy a toupee and look ridiculous, but I won't do that.
Oh, I'd pay for that. I'd pay for that just for the gag.
But even the point is,
great.
How nice of you to lie like that. The point is that I think that there are many who would let it consume them more than I try. And I'm not faultless, but make no mistake, there are many things that try and consume me, but I will fight back. And I think that's the difference.
And Phil, I think a lot of it talks with our self-talk, not only our subconscious, our mental, but our verbal talk. I heard somebody say once that when you speak, who's the first person to hear what you say? Our ears are close to our mouth. We are. And going back to what I mentioned at an earlier point, when I changed my self-talk 30 years ago, and again, it didn't happen overnight, it was a process. And I did a lot of reading and listening to people who are much wiser than I was at that point. That began the process of change. And, for example, in our house, there were certain words that were not acceptable, like never, always, and words like that we just, with our daughters, we said we can't use those words in our house, because that is not, I'll call it positive self-talk. But Norman Vincent Peale, whatever, in the 40s wrote the book, Power of Positive Thinking, I think. And there's really a lot to that. There are things
What's
that we
the problem with the word? I get never. I get that. What is the problem with always?
You always do that.
Ah,
it was more.
Okay. All right, let's see.
Very few things are always.
Yeah.
You have a tendency. Now, I understand that.
Now, you're a fellow who's lived a successful life. You've had ups, you've had downs. How important is finding joy in small things? In other words, I tell you why I ask this, because I always believe that people who want the next great car and they want to buy the next big thing, and it's consumerism gone mad, and they think that's going to make them happy. And of course, excuse me, it never does. It's nice for a moment, and I've been there and done it, and it's empty. And I find pleasure in just very small things. It makes me a much happier, more contented person.
I'm 100% with you, Russ. I believe joy is an internal thing.
Hmm.
I think happiness is an external thing.
Ah, oh,
That's the
Love that.
distinction we make.
oh, that's interesting.
I feel like we've just been taught another Keelism there. I
This
love
is a
that.
good one. So joy is an internal thing, and happiness is external.
That's how I see it.
Do you want to expand on that a bit? I think
sure.
I'm loving it, but I want to make sure.
I mean, when I get a new car,
Mhm.
does it make me feel happy? Yes. When we go to an event or whatever that I really have fun at, does that make me happy? Yes.
Hmm.
But joy, quite frankly, comes from things that money can't buy. Those are internal things. It's how I feel about myself. It's the relationships I have with my wife and my daughters and my grandkids and my grandpups. I've got 3 grandpups.
We knew we loved him. We knew we loved him straight away.
But
Now you see, straight away, I'm interested in the grandpups. What are they?
Everybody is all dog mad here. Come on. What
I'm
are
very
your grand?
about that, Phil.
What are
no,
your grandpups?
It's the people issues. It's the relationships I have with people.
Hmm.
Not only within my family, but my church and all that kind of stuff. All those things are important to me. And
Now, it's really interesting. I didn't know this, but I had a feeling that you had to be a man of religion. I know that sounds really silly, but I just had a feeling that you had to be.
Did mention you alluded to it earlier on.
The reason,
I'll make a distinction, Phil, between religion and faith.
Yeah, but the reason why I believe that, or faith, absolutely is probably a better word. But the reason why I say that is because I'm such a huge believer that those who have faith are able to deal, I believe, and this I could be completely wrong, but I believe this to be the case, and I hope it's the case, are able to deal with whatever life throws at them with a slightly different pair of eyes to those who denigrate faith. Because although I never would sort of stand here and preach to anyone saying that, you must believe in this, you must believe in the other, I do believe that religion, amongst many things that it can do, can actually offer people comfort in most troubling of times. And I always worry that those who have no religion or faith behind them, how do they cope with those troubling times when they're thrown their way?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, I would not be here today. Literally, I would not be alive if I didn't have that, because that, in a sense, that saved me when we were going through very tough times a number of years ago. And then I'll just share. Now, I've shared this with some people, but last year, my consulting business basically shut down. I've always been very successful in business, and all of a sudden it just stopped. And I went through the toughest financial situation, I more than I'd ever believed. If it weren't for that, I don't know what I would have done. But I just kept. I knew that it would get better. I knew it would get better. I knew it was faith, the belief, the hope, and so on. And it has. It's turned not back to where it was. That's fine. Forced me to pivot in a couple areas and open a new business and offer some other things with my existing business. But it was because of that faith that kept me going. And
now, was that faith? Was that partly faith in your own abilities, or partly faith in I'm going to call it a higher power? I don't know what term. I'm trying to use a neutral.
I know what you're saying. I think I know what you're saying. I believe I know what you're saying. It was I had faith in my own ability. Number one, I'm a smart guy, and I also knew that I'd been doing some things that weren't as well as I could have been doing them. And then, of course, the whole situation last year, I knew it. So I had faith that I would be able to find whatever it was, because I certainly didn't see it when I was going through it. But now that I look back, I can see that I did have that. But it was also that spiritual faith, if you will. Whatever somebody believes is fine. But I think you're right. You have to have something, because I've also concluded that it's bigger than I am. I can't do it by myself. I'm not good enough, whatever, to be able to do it all by myself. I need other people, but there's also that faith in that higher power, if you will, to know that I need that. That's very freeing too, by the way, to know that it's not all on my shoulders.
Phil and I disagree on a load of things, which is absolutely fine. We can't. I know Phil thinks that my life is much emptier than his, in as much as I have no faith at all for a whole variety of reasons, which I'm not going to go into now. I wish I did. I don't. Phil has a faith, and I know he finds a lot of strength in that, and I think it's great. I mean, my view is very simple. If it helps you, if it enriches your life, and it gets you through every day, fantastic. I think that's absolutely wonderful. Who wouldn't want that? You know, I don't have it. I'd like to, but I don't. And I get that. It would be lovely. And it's interesting. You say it's very freeing, knowing that you're not doing it alone. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm thinking, I'm so doing this alone. I get the dilemma, right? I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that you just mentioned, that responded to what I said earlier, to know that I don't have to go through all this alone gives it, quite frankly, gives me power. It gives me power, and again, it all goes back to what I call the head and the heart and the gut. Just to keep going no matter what.
So how do you mean the head and I know they're two different things, but explain what you mean by the head and the heart. Well,
it's not only how I think, in my conscious thinking, if you will. We consciously think, but there's a subconscious thinking too that goes on that we don't know, and I share regularly. I mean, every morning, one of the reasons I get up early every morning, I spend an hour just with me. I call it John time, where I go analog before I go digital. I don't get online, because once I start checking email, it's over.
It's done. You're done. I know.
And I have to separate that. So I need to free up my head, and that helps my heart, my soul part. I think we all have a soul. And make that distinction. I did it this morning, and then I journal. I write every morning, and one of the things I do is I write questions down. Questions for which I'm looking for answers, and they're personal, they're business, whatever. But I don't know the answer, so I just write the questions down, and I just deposit that in my subconscious, if you will, knowing, and I know this now by what's happened over the last 5-10 years, that the answers will eventually come. But I need that time to give my subconscious time and space to work. Well, I don't have to think. I can't think my way out of everything, if that makes sense. It's been phenomenal how the answers come.
Well, so, I would say, John, that you are phenomenal. So.
Oh, absolutely. When you said, I remember we were chatting previous to this broadcast, and you said about the John time and the writing the journal, and I took that to heart, and I've always had a big notepad here, because if I don't write it down, but I really, it does really help. And the analog versus digital. Yep. I get my favorite pen. I write my notes. I think how I'm going to try and plan, try and get through the things that I've set my tasks for the day. It really does help. And I love the idea. Put something down there, forget about it, and it'll come from somewhere.
Yeah.
It's very true. It is very, I know people might be listening and watching now and going, what a load of old nonsense. It's really not.
On the contrary, I think that's a really clever idea.
It really helps.
It gets it out of the system.
My life is proof of it.
No. John, you've been an amazing guest.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much for your, thank you for getting up at 7 previous, must be even earlier, in Ohio. Is it summer now? I'm terrible. Do you have big differences in the seasons there? I'm always fascinated by that.
We have 4 seasons.
So do we, but we have it every day. That's the problem with London. Every single day we get 4 seasons. You don't know what the hell's going to happen.
Frankie Valli would be proud.
He would be proud. John, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Where do people go if they want more information about you, John?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. It's JONKEEL. I'm very active on LinkedIn. They can go to my business website, improvedresults.com, and my story's there. If people want to reach out and just chat, that's fine. I love to talk with people.
That's great.
Thank you
John,
so much.
thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Oh, absolutely. Our
Farewell.
pleasure.
Come
Really
back and
was.
see us soon. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Amazing guy. Amazing guy.
Crumbs.
Such an interesting man. I was introduced to him by a mutual friend, and we had a Zoom call, and I came off and I was just like, that is an amazing man.
You
Someone
know,
who's really
I can't believe I've
looked
got hiccups in the middle of a live show. What?
I'm going to give you a shot. I'm going to give you a shot. You're
Thank
Phil
you.
Dave. That doesn't shock anybody.
Thank you.
Right?
What I quite like, though,
Hmm.
about John is there is someone who is a walking font of knowledge.
Totally.
You know,
Yeah.
that's it. But that is the sign, and this is what annoys me when you hear all these horror stories about people being so ageist now and saying, you know, oh, only those who are just starting off in life will do. It's that it's those who have experience under their belt are the ones who we can learn the most from. And by breaking the tradition that we've had for so many years, where people do learn from those who have experience of life, to now this horrible situation where those who are nearly starting out are put in a position of some sort of power just because
they don't know what they're doing.
they'll last longer.
They don't
Guess
know
what?
they're doing.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Of course it is. You taking out the business arena for a minute and put it into the media, if I may use that term, without making us feel nauseous. I'm going to read some of the comments in a minute. But it's true. You know, you say, oh, it's youth, and you put them out there and they go, you have no idea what the hell you're doing. You don't have the gravitas. You don't have the experience, you know, and it kills their careers. And I don't have any sympathy for that. And I blame the producers. I blame the producers who said, yeah, we'll get so-and-so because they're good. And then something serious and heavyweight comes on. They're absolutely drowning. They have no idea. They can't deal with it. It's horses for courses. You know, it's absolutely horses for courses. Martin Allen says, I don't believe if faith is religious. I have faith and I'm not religious.
Yeah, I did. I must admit, I did see that comment. No, I did see that comment. And also, I have to say, Martin, that I realized after I'd said that about faith, that it was wrong of me to automatically tie that to religion, because I do realize that there are some people who are totally irreligious who can absolutely have faith. I think my mother is a classic example of it. She has traits of, actually both my parents really have traits of their Judaism, but they are not what I would call religious. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not completely convinced that I'm actually that overly religious, really. I possibly am a bit of a hypocrite. I do some elements of the religion, but I certainly don't do all of
Postman.
it. So, the postman, I'm sure, was very happy to see you. But
well, it's the same guy. I always say hello and, you know, thank him for his work. He hasn't given up.
Do you know what, RK? I don't think we've had quite enough guests today.
No, I think we need some more high caliber, interesting and fascinating guests.
Yeah, absolutely. Stand by. Hold on.
I hope people in Bankstoke, you know what, Ed, you're bloody right, it's a Bankstoke. Exactly. What the hell did I get up for that for? I know what it's going to say. Your life's shit.
If I may just say,
I have to open the envelope.
If I may just say, for no other reason other than I absolutely love the biography that I have been sent about one of our next guests. I'm excited to speak to both of them, because here, one of them is described as, and I'm hoping that this is their biography as opposed to me actually quoting someone else being horrible.
Hardly embarrassing, would it?
Oh, quite. It says here, I am one of 5 children. The one who never married or had children. The gay one. Do you know what? I think that tells you everything you need to know how terrific or a fabulous sense of humor this person's got. And joined alongside Johnny Grant, we can say a very good afternoon to Rose Campion. Hello, both of you.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Very nice to meet you both.
I got to say, one thing about all our guests today, they got fabulous backgrounds. I'm serious. Everyone has had fantastic backgrounds today.
Although I'm going to be honest, Johnny wins it on the shirt
Johnny,
front.
I think I'm going with Johnny today. Johnny, so far, is background of the day. And a hell of a shirt.
He's dressed up for you.
I can see
Thank
that.
you.
Well, I put on a fresh,
I'm sorry, Rose. I'm not Rose. I'm not going to lie. You've clearly made no effort. It's very disappointing.
Yeah. How to make a guest feel at home. That's Look, Johnny, I know you're very pleased with yourself with your fancy shirt and your fancy headset, but I put on a fresh t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If you're a drummer, you'll get it. Welcome. Thank you so much for finding the time to tell us about yourselves. Please do. I'll start with Rose. Tell us about yourselves.
Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon again.
Well, you have my bio in front of you because that's sort of the main things. I've had a check.
Hang on, we've got it, but the listener
I've read it. Phil's read it. Our
Okay.
producers read it, but our listeners haven't all over the world. They haven't read it.
Okay. I started life as a physiotherapist and went sort of sideways into various different departments from there, and ended up helping to found a complementary medicine centre in Nottinghamshire. And we had something like 30 part-time therapists working there, all different disciplines, and quite an extraordinary place. It was unbelievably wonderful to work there. And while I was there, I was doing physiotherapy. I was doing some expert witness work, medical legal stuff, which was very, very interesting. I really enjoyed. And
is that when you're called into? Sorry, is that when you're called into court and have to give?
Yes.
Evidence? Is that what you mean by that? Okay.
Yes, I did some clinical negligence and personal injury cases.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I was learning how to do Reiki, and I became a Reiki master, and I now teach other people how to do it, and I use it quite a lot.
Rose,
And
you've got to help me. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry.
What's
I'm
Reiki?
all for complementary medicines. Truly, I am. I know the names, but I never know what they are. What is Reiki? I have heard the name.
Yes, it started off with Buddhist monks about 2,000 years ago, using it as a self-development tool. We now use it more as a hands-on healing, but it's one of those things that anybody can learn how to do, and you can help yourself by using it as well as other people. And in fact, it's very much the way the monks used it, as I say, was as a self-development tool. And I see that as being the essence of it. You use it for working on yourself, looking inwards and creating a better you in all sorts of levels.
Oh, that's interesting. I never knew that bit, because I used to do a bit of healing, which was Reiki, but it was hands off. I never touched. And my very dear friend Debbie Jacobs, whose daughter got married, by the way, the other day. Well done. Congratulations to Zoe. Lovely. Very proud of her. Known her since she was a baby. And Debbie said, I will teach you. She was a brilliant who used to healer. Amazing. I mean, it doesn't do it anymore. But it was absolutely amazing. And I said, I just don't have the time to learn. I just haven't got the time to go to courses and everything like that. But I never did it to improve myself. Somebody had a bit of a backache or something. I'd do a bit of healing, and they all said, "Oh my goodness, I don't know where it came from." No idea. I assumed I was just like a pipe. Does that make sense? I just assumed I was like a pipe or a conduit coming from wherever the hell it came from. But it arrived. But I never did it for myself. Or I didn't felt self-improved. So explain that a little bit more.
Well, it ties in. The reason I mention it is because it ties in a bit with something I've been hearing from various people I've spoken to on the male journey side of things, the group there. The idea that when you're younger, there's sort of two phases of life, and Johnny will correct me on this. When you're younger and you get married and you have a family and this, that, and the other, you're looking outwards, you're constantly sort of developing things around you. And then as you get older and things calm down, you start looking inwards. And that's the sort of the inward journey, if you like, which the male journey seems to focus on.
So, Johnny, one has to assume, as a chap who is in his early 70s, you're still very much looking outward, I hope.
Inward and outward. I was sort of forced to do quite a lot of inward-looking work when I found my way into 12-step recovery 10 years ago.
Okay.
So life fell apart 10 years ago. Life fell apart. I wondered whether I could face life, and I found my way to my first meeting in 12-step recovery, and I've actually discovered the new life, and have had to do quite a lot of inner reflective work in that time.
So, Johnny, now we have a golden rule here on the radio that if you don't answer the question, tell me to get stuffed. It's absolutely fine. We're not the BBC. It's never adversarial. It's never an inquisition. It's a conversation. So was that alcohol that was your?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had a.
I found my way. I had a problem in life, and I thought maybe I'll do something about the drink, and found my way to Alcoholics Anonymous. And in recovery, it became much clearer to me the way I had used alcohol through my life, and not very successfully.
Was it to and forgive me again, but it's very important because addiction, I know that's not why you're here, but addiction is a common theme amongst our guests because it comes in all forms. Alcohol is just one, drugs, gambling, gaming, all, sex, all sorts of things. Were you using it to sort of blot out stuff you weren't happy with, or I mean that's cliche, but
blot out, but also I somehow thought this enabled me to do things that otherwise I was fearful of doing, and certainly one of the darkest periods of my life after a friend of mine committed suicide. That was hitting the bottle. That was about not knowing where to turn, not having someone to talk to. That was about blotting things out, and it was not a successful period of my life.
I'm not trying to blow smoke up your backside, but you look the picture of health. You look great.
Well, I am today for 73. I am in good health, and I'm very grateful for that.
Our last guest was 74.
I'm 74 next month.
There you go. So, chances of that's just serendipity, by the way. I wish I could say it was planning, but it was
a prerequisite for some of our guests today. I'm so sorry.
You have to be over 70. That's okay. Not me. All right. So this journey, this whole movement. Tell us about that.
Well, its roots come from the 90s and the men's movement in the States. The realization that in non-Indigenous communities, the initiation of boys into manhood has disappeared, and there were those who said that there's no good thinking about initiating boys into manhood unless you've got men who are sorted, elder men who are sorted. So Richard Rohr, who is a Franciscan Catholic monk, created a 5-day men's event, which is an initiation, an event of initiation into the next stage of life. And so the roots come out of the Christian wisdom stream, and initially it was very Christian. In the UK, as the years have gone by, the basic structure of that event has remained the same, but it has changed to ensure that it's still spiritual, but there's a welcome to any man of any religion or any faith or none, and we hope that they will still see some of the Christian roots, but we hope that actually that those aren't necessarily the significant bits of the experience. More of the experience is about being with men, being with other men, spending time alone, so that's the sort of the origins of Male Journey, and the end of July we've got a physical event happening in Scotland, which will be our Men's Rites of Passage event.
And what would happen? What would happen if you attended this?
Well, there would be a certain amount. Well, I think what we know is that we actually spend quite a lot of time looking at words, but actually it's not the words that are the significant things that people take away. So that there is time in the big group, there is time in small groups where groups of 6 men share quite personal, deep stuff. There is time alone, there is time in the wilderness. There's a sort of it's breaking away from the daily round of things. It's setting aside your phone and your all of that caboodle. It's a bit about being open to what's unfolding, and most of those who apply to come are finding that there are certain things in their life that are shifting. It may be that they've gone through a relationship breakup, that they've gone through a serious bereavement, that they've lost it, that certain significant events are happening in their life which are sort of prompting them to ask questions about, who am I and where am I heading?
So my, I guess my thing with this is, if these are internal thoughts, aren't they? These are issues that one has that you're struggling with. This is just me speaking personally. I'm not being derogatory in any way. If I just wandered off into the wilderness, I don't see it wouldn't help me in the least. It wouldn't help me. I'm sure it helps loads of people. I wouldn't gain from that. I feel that's what I feel.
Well, I think you might be expressing what I might have said 20 years ago, and I'm not someone who has naturally connected with nature in all sorts of ways, but each day there are certain rituals that happen where certain things are acted, and there are sounds, and there are words, there's actions, and these are very powerful, and the experience the men are going to get is not a brain experience. Some of it is going to be body. Some of it is about connecting with deep gut feelings.
Is this similar to? I'm trying to work out what this is like. There was the American thing where they'd go out and what was it? Oh, the hell was it called? Like fire something or other. I can't remember what it was. I can't think that the words just have just sort of slipped my mind. But there are certain similarities in that some of the things that we have adopted do come out of the practices of indigenous communities. So one of the things about the event is deep listening. Is that nobody is going to look to offer you a solution. Nobody's going to try and fix you, but they are going to listen to you. And there's something quite powerful about that. And people in the small groups are going to speak, and they're not going to be interrupted. It's not a discussion. It's things that happen in a safe
safe place, a safe, secure container where there's a team there that creates this safe space in which things can happen. It's quite. I know it's quite difficult to explain.
It's a little. My struggle here is it's a bit vague. That's my problem.
Yeah,
I mean, we created MRS, Men's Radio. I didn't use the word safe because for me that was too Californian. I used non-judgmental.
Yeah,
we wanted to create a space where it would be unless somebody came on with revolting views, in which case Phil and I would rip them apart because I think that's only right. But if where it's non-judgmental and people can come and talk freely and openly and express their views, which is the main tenet of what we wanted to set out to do. So we're not miles apart.
No, we're not miles apart, and that's part of the reason that it's good to be here with you, and recognizing that for many men, they don't have another man that they will talk to seriously about serious things in their lives. We've got 15 or so local groups around the United Kingdom, so that there are men gathering on a regular basis throughout the United Kingdom and connecting with one another. So that and some of those who will come on the event, that their first contact with us is through one of those local groups. So that absolutely right. Certainly not non-judgmental. Certainly not fixing. Certainly about confidentiality and respect and all those sorts of things. So that and for some men, I mean, for I go back in my own life to that when I was talking about hitting the bottle after my friend committed suicide, at that time I didn't have a man that I could talk seriously to about what was happening to me.
So you didn't have, Johnny, a really close friend that you could say, let's go and have a coffee because I've got a. You didn't.
No, I'd got a really close friend who also knew the guy who'd committed suicide. But was I prepared? But at the time, I wasn't necessarily prepared to talk to him about what was really happening to me.
The strapline for the whole radio when we set it up is where men really talk, and the reason I wrote that is because of the suicide statistics, which was the spur to start the whole thing out by pure chance. I'll be honest with you, when I was doing newspaper reviews, and it was 80% men, 20% women. Obviously a huge disparity, and the main cause, according to all the articles that I then read, was that men don't talk. So it is very important, which is why we were very happy to have you and Rose on the show. It's very important for people to be able to have, even if they've got one person, to offload on. And I use the word offload advisedly.
Now, Rose, you have sat, speaking of someone to talk to, Rose, you have sat there very patiently and very quietly. But just to explain to those who are maybe not necessarily joining up the dots yet, where it is that you fit in all of this.
I'm just an add-on.
Excellent stuff. Well, in that case, it's been great to see you. There we go.
Cheerio. Thanks for coming. You're not just an add-on. That's yes. I mean, I've been sitting here puzzling, thinking, well, Johnny's got it. I get where he's coming from, and I'm little vague where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, seriously, I shouldn't really be here because I'm not a member of the group. I'm not a man, and my role, my connection, is through somebody who has done the initiation, the rites of passage, who realised that this charity is doing some really valuable work. It's something that I strongly believe in as well. I think this whole business of men having somebody to talk to is a key thing. I mean, as a physiotherapist for years, talking to an individual who's got a physical problem you're with them for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, maybe longer on a regular basis, and they do talk to you. And I found a lot of men were telling me things that they probably never told anybody else, but I was outside their circle. I was safe because I was never going to tell anybody else. It was all confidential, and that they perhaps needed to offload. And I think
I
when
wonder
you're
why it is, Rose, that they would choose. I don't mean you, Rose Campion, but they would choose a physiotherapist to suddenly unload all this stuff. Because if you ever meet a hairdresser, they say, "My God, the stuff I get told." And I'm thinking, well, I haven't been to the barber since January 2020. I cut my own hair now, but I just sit there and I'm not going to use them as a psychiatrist. They're there to cut my hair, for Christ's sake.
No,
I don't understand that. It's a strange link.
But you say, but hang on a second. I don't think people go out of their way to use an individual such as Rose in that position as a psychiatrist. I think it's just when it's almost like a case of when someone takes their eye off the ball. So when you're in a physiotherapist's office, as it were, and you are lying there and you're having a real sort of casual conversation with somebody who absolutely has no vested interest in your life, which is not a rude way of putting it. It's on the contrary. It's the reason what actually sparks
totally objective. They have no skin in the game.
They know that there's not going to be any opinion coming back at them. They just know there's an ear hole there. And I think that's why it just sort of almost happens naturally that people would do that.
Yeah. I think also that it's, if you're physically injured, you're vulnerable anyway. It sometimes triggers the need to, again, it's this trigger to look at yourself on different levels, maybe look inside, maybe acknowledge that you've got a problem. Certainly when you, as I say, you spend time with people in that situation, as you say, Phil, they just use you as an ear, really. Yeah.
Do you mean acknowledge you have a problem in addition to your physical problem?
Yes.
Okay.
People will often come to a clinic, and certainly in the complementary medicine world, people will come with a physical problem. And actually, once you start talking to them and unraveling them, there's a whole load of stuff going on at different levels. It's not just physical.
Well, also, I'd imagine don't underestimate sort of how much that kind of thing can build up, because Johnny was saying just before how he didn't necessarily have anyone that he could talk to when his friend took his life. And I think that kind of trauma can only bubble up and up. There's no way that someone can release that kind of anguish within without the need to offload it. And if you can't offload it to a friend, well, then just someone who can listen is the next best thing. That's why this whole pandemic has been absolutely horrendous for those who've been on their own. They've literally had nobody to talk to. So they can't even now. They can't even now go to these services such as physiotherapy or the head, or they can now, but you know what I mean. At the time, they couldn't go to these services such as physiotherapy or hairdressers or anything like that. Some people actually, however ridiculous it might sound, wholly depended on them, and it was taken away from them.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, one of the hats I've worn in the past was as a hospital chaplain. And in 11 years as a hospital chaplain, there were only maybe 2 or 3 people I talked to who talked about their physical condition. Most of them talked about the other things that were happening in their life, and some of them came out with extraordinary things like, this had to happen to me to stop and take stock of life.
Yeah. Yes,
Wow.
that's something that repeats a lot when you're interacting with people in that sort of way.
That they think that they had to get badly injured or ill to put their life on pause and reevaluate it.
It's a trigger for looking inwards, isn't it? If you're not able to do your normal activities of life, your whole outlook or inlook is completely changed.
Well, I get that. I had a huge car crash, had to learn to walk again, so I'm hearing what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. Johnny, at the end of the period, the people spend how many? First of all, how many people would turn up at an event? Say the one you're doing in Scotland.
Well, most years it's been 30, 40, 50.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, so there is a serious question about what happens to them after they leave the event, because
Well, that's where I was heading.
The likelihood is that if the event has started things shifting more, then and some of those in our team this year talk about actually the continuing working going on for months. And so that there's a sort of a need. Well, there's advice that it's good to stay in touch with men who are who are sound and who are in touch with themselves.
Do they get to the end of it? I've got to hurry along. Sorry, but do they? Is there a ceremony at the end? Are they given a diploma? I mean, what happens at the end of the session?
At the end, they emerge as initiated men, and they will take home with them whatever has happened in them, plus something physical, which will be, if you like, it won't be a certificate, but it will be like the gift, the gold that they take away, so yes, they will take something away, and there's and the advice is to try not to jump back into work the next day. Try to give yourself a bit of time to allow to readjust back into, the helter skelter of daily life. So I do want to say that Rose has yet to say what her contribution is, and her contribution since is in giving me advice and help about how to spread the word. And I wouldn't want those who are watching to she's interested in the work. She knows someone. But the advice that she's given has been invaluable to me, and I hope will be valued by the charity as we move forward.
So, if people want to know more about it, Rose, how do they start to look it all up?
Well, we're on most of the social media platforms these days. Johnny's been working very hard getting it all done. I think the best place to start is the website, malejourney.org.uk, and from there are links to everything else. And if you follow some of the links and you read some of the stories from the men who've been through this initiation process, it's quite moving and quite revealing. And I think a lot of people will perhaps read some of the stories and think, yes, that resonates with me. I can understand why that happened or how that happened.
Are you on Twitter?
Yes.
We're at Male Journey
UK.
Well, if you would like to spread, if you could return the favour, and if you would like to spread the word about men's radio, we would be absolutely delighted, as it's a two-way street. Thank you so much. When is your event in Scotland? When is it? When's this kicking off?
The 21st of July to the 25th.
I hope the weather is kind. The Scottish weather in the wilderness, man.
But on the plus side,
it's going to be
on the plus side, the land of Scottish salmon and Scottish whiskey, fabulous.
So, scenery and scenery, beautiful.
Thank you both so much.
Appreciate your time, Rose. Thank you very much, Johnny. Keep up your fantastic work. It's great.
Farewell, both.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Oh, that's interesting. Terrific. Well, do you know what? As if As
As
if
by
we
magic.
haven't spoken to enough people today.
I think we need
We
some
couldn't
more guests.
possibly end the way. We couldn't possibly end the show without at least one more person. Oh yes,
No, we've
it's
got to have
Chantal
another guest.
Rickard. Hi,
Hello.
Chantal.
Oh God, look
Hi,
at
how
your
are you?
tan. Oh my God. Look at your tan. You look about 31. Jesus. Christ,
If
look at
only.
you. What?
If
I swear,
only.
Chantal, I am not kidding. It looked like you've been. Wow. Now I'm pissed off.
I don't know
Now I'm
what to
pissed.
say, and I'm never normally lost for words.
No, you. What the last? But the only you lost for words. I think not.
A rarity.
You haven't been to the hairdresser again today, have you?
No.
Because last Friday you'd just been into the hairdresser with another
No,
exotic dude.
I've been out for a very nice lunch, actually. So I hope I'm as articulate as I would. I try to be on Friday
Chantal, I've
afternoons.
had lunch with you many times. The idea of you now being articulate is fairly slim, I think we can say. We when I was staying with Chantal partly, in the nicest sense of the word, she was my landlady just before everyone gets excited. And we never saw each other because I never get up. And she's gone at the crack of dawn on her bicycle pedaling away around Los Angeles. Yes. And we went, said we'd have to leave notes and things, and said, well, all right, we'll have lunch. So we went to Soho House in LA, and being Brits, obviously, we ordered drinks, and then we ordered a bottle of wine, and I've never forgotten the looks from the other table. Because
Indeed.
nobody drinks. In LA, hardly anybody drinks, and they look at it like we'd come in from members of a touring company of Lost Weekend. I mean, they were staring at us.
I can hand on heart say that I now have absolutely no desire whatsoever to go to LA.
Oh, no, it would be fine because if I was
Friends of
there,
mine.
I just live the Brit life.
Yeah.
On the
British
plus
Brit
side,
life.
though, well, I was going to say on the plus side, I could imagine, though, that if one does go there and order a drink, they're never likely to turn around and say, sorry, we've not got any of it left. That's the only plus side.
They got tons of it. They got all of it. Just no one has it. It's ridiculous. Now,
Chantal, sorry, you were just about to say, sorry, friends of yours, what? Sorry.
Friends of mine in LA went out with British friends, went out with some other British friends for a British lunch at which there were going to be libations, clearly. And they got to the end of the first bottle of wine and ordered a second. And the waitress said, but you've already had one.
And on that note, you can't possibly get any better.
Isn't it?
I think it's time for this. Oh, yes, we love
That'll
TV.
do. How's that? I know you can't say what you're doing, and I have no idea, by the way. I'm not putting yours, but how is it going well? That's all we need to know.
Yes, I'm working on a secret project, but actually going very well. Working for a company that has bought another company in America, and I'm just sort of doing a joined up piece of work about how the countries talk to each other and how they talk to the world and how they talk internally. And actually, it's all about storytelling, really. It's all about how companies
bit grown
talk
up.
about themselves. So it's
Far too
lovely.
grown up.
Yeah,
Grown up stuff. I'm very excited because we had a guest from Ohio a little earlier. He was absolutely fantastic. You're in Dubai. Not sure where Johnny and Rose were from. Simon, woman, I don't know where Simon was. I'm not sure where Simon was from either. Anyway, there we are. Okay, what has come across your purview?
Well, last week we ran out of time. We always run out of time, which is lovely because there's always lots to chat about. But the thing that I probably should have put at the top of the list last week was a 3-part series that has been on the BBC called Time. And in other words, time spent in jail, so doing time.
Wow.
And it's an extraordinarily good British drama. It came out the week that the BAFTA Television Awards were announced for this year. But it absolutely will, I think, probably sweep the board for the BAFTA Awards next year. It's an incredibly good piece of drama. 3-parter from Jimmy McGovern, who you may remember wrote Cracker, which was a very, very well-known TV series in the late 80s, early 90s, I think, starring Robert Coltrane, who was a sort of forensic sort of pathologist working inside the police system.
He was more of a psychologist, wasn't he?
Psychologist, exactly.
Yes,
he was a psychologist. Anyway, Jimmy McGovern knows how to write a really good character, and he's written 2 fantastic characters in this. One that is played by the gorgeous Sean Bean, one played by Stephen Graham, both of whom are, you know, British working class actors who have got the absolute top of their game in Hollywood and are noted for their prowess. They are brilliant actors, both of them. And to have 2 in the same television program is an absolute treat.
Now, Chantal, you are without a shadow of a doubt one of the cleverest people who knows your subject. I have to understand, and I can't get my head around why people don't know the answer to this.
Yeah.
Why is it Sean Bean as opposed to Sean Bean or Sean Bourne? it just, what's going on? It doesn't make sense. My mind is aghast.
No, well, it's a bit like Harvey Weinstein. Is it Weinstein? Is it Weinstein? Is it? It's just.
To me, it's just Harvey.
It's a thing.
Just Harv. Russ and Harv. We're like that.
Yeah. So anyway, there we are. It is Harvey Weinstein, but it should be Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein.
It should be Weinstein if you look at the spelling of it, but that doesn't.
But it's Weinstein. I can assure you. I promise you. Guarantee.
Anyway,
only because one of my best pals worked with him for 5 years every day, so I know it's Weinstein.
I'm perfectly sure that we can move on from him now. But anyway, yes.
Not for that.
Rather bizarrely, that, and not that one wants to spend a lot of time talking about Harvey Weinstein, but I reposted a little post of mine on Facebook from 4 years ago today, where I talked about a fundraiser that I've been doing in New York for BAFTA that I used to work for in Los Angeles. And Harvey had come along to make a speech and to help us fundraise. And it was a bit of a throwback to 4 years ago. And it just sort of said to me, gosh, how life has changed.
How different things are now.
He was. I mean, putting aside a monster, putting that, I know it's easy to say, apart from Dracula kills those people. I understand that. But he was hugely successful.
He was.
He was enormously successful and horribly talented. Not a nice guy, but hugely successful.
Yeah, and did a lot for British cinema. You know, a lot of the stories were British stories. A lot of the writers were British that he used. A lot of the talent were British. You know, he brought a lot of people to our screens who are now very well-known names. Having said that, let's move on.
No, absolutely.
Excellent idea.
Anyway, back to Time, which is BBC One. It's a 3-parter. All the parts are up there on the BBC Player to watch. Sean Bean is going to jail. You see him literally leaving to go to jail right at the beginning, and you're sort of wondering what it's all about. He's a teacher. Generally, teachers don't end up, banged up in prison. And Stephen Graham is the first prison warden that he wants.
Okay.
The story it unravels in the way that wonderful stories do, and we're on the side of both of them, strangely. Sean Bean has killed somebody in a road accident, so he's not a natural criminal, but he has been a drunk, so he's suffered from mental unwellness that has come to the fore in terms of alcoholism. Stephen Graham, on the other hand, has been a great prison warder for 22 years, I think. But his son has also sort of slipped off a bit, and he's ended up in another prison. And because he's the son of a prison warden, he then is in a rather dangerous and vulnerable place.
Yeah.
So there are 2 competing stories that run alongside each other, which are absolutely brilliant. And the 2 of them are so good. I'm not going to tell you anymore because I really want to encourage people to watch it. It's got poignancy, it's got pathos, it's beautifully written. The voice, the voice that both characters use is so authentic, and it's a must. Watch it now. I'm sure it will win BAFTA awards this time next year, and not to be missed.
Now, do you know, I don't know about you two, but sorry, I don't know about you two, but I get really cross with prison dramas that make me feel sorry for those who have ultimately broken the law, because I don't understand sort of how clever their psychology is of the script, where they would be able to make you look at a character who in everyday life anyone else would say, well, they're in prison, therefore they must have done something wrong, and therefore I mean, as assuming that they are actually guilty of their crime. And I'm well aware there are some people who are not always guilty. But what I'm trying to get at is assuming that someone is guilty of their crime. And again, sorry, the dreaded S word, society is very quick to say, well, they're a terrible person. They've obviously done something wrong. They deserve to be there. But what is it about prison dramas that the writers are so cunning that they actually make you more often than not feel sorry for those who are the ones who have broken the law, those characters, and somehow we look upon those who are trying to uphold the law in the form of, say, the guards or anything like that. They are the evil ones, and it's very weird how they do that.
Well, Phil, you make a very good point. I would go back to the ethos of your own radio station, which is that we are hopefully caring and sharing, and we understand people's vulnerabilities. And I think an awful lot of people who end up in prison are vulnerable people who have lost their way, possibly because of the environment in which they've grown up. That's not the case with everybody. One could argue forever about nature and nurture and people born evil or not born evil. But if you look at this particular piece, they take the two main characters inside. The cellmate of the Sean Bean character is also a young man who has mental illness and actually is treated, I don't think you even find out what he's in there for, but he's treated with such a lightness of touch that actually your heart goes out to him. And I'm not saying that everybody in jail, and I'm part of the Bleeding Heart Society, that everybody in jail should be let out, and clearly that's not the right thing to do. But there is an understanding, I think, that Jimmy McGovern particularly writes into his victims, whether they are prisoners or whether they are people who are civilians who are not on the wrong side of the law. Anyway, that's just my.
Let me ask you this. Jimmy McGovern is a brilliant writer. Cracker, yeah. I remember being absolutely riveted by it, which makes me ask, what the hell happened to Robbie Coltrane? Don't say Hagar or whatever, Hagrid. I get that. That's Harry Potter. Fine, right.
Yeah.
Why? What a great actor he was. He probably still is a great actor, but he was a fantastic in Cracker. He was brilliant.
I think he lost his way slightly. I can't speak for him. I've met him. I enjoyed his company when I met him. I used to make the Parkinson show for ITV, and he was a guest that I had on the Parkinson show, and I absolutely adored his company. I thought he was an incredibly clever and interesting man who was really at the beginning of his career then. I think somewhere things went a little bit awry for him, but still a terrific actor, although not blessed with great health.
Oh, all right. Okay. It's just since Cracker, I can't remember, apart from playing the giant in Harry Potter, Cracker was so outstanding, such a wonderful melding together of a great script and a great actor.
Yeah.
It was so nuanced. Anyway, enough. All right. Next on the Rickard's list.
Okay. Well, I wanted something for you, Russ, because I always try and find something that I think that you will love particularly. And I know how you talk about
Phil's face then was an absolute picture. If his eyes rolled back any more, they'd be in the back of his trousers.
He's not being nice.
Can I just say, in my defense, it actually wasn't. I know this, you won't believe this. I wasn't rolling my eyes back. I was actually looking at something above the laptop. I'm so sorry.
Yes,
that was very badly timed, I recognise.
Chantal, you have my full attention.
Okay, so I think this will appeal to you, and you've probably seen it. You may have seen it twice or three times, and just keep putting it on repeat. It is a lovely series on Sky Nature. Sky has extended its sort of panoply of channels over the years. They now have a ton of channels. If you haven't seen them, go and find them. There are lots and lots. But
Sky Nature is my favourite. Love it.
This isn't about you, Phil. This is about me. Chantal has said it's about me.
Anyway, it's a wonderful series. Two series, I think. There are two there called Dogs with Extraordinary Jobs. And
I'm loving it straight away. I don't need to know anymore.
Exactly.
That's
it does what it says on the tin. It's a Ron Seal TV program. You absolutely get it. It takes 3 different stories in each episode of dogs that are absolutely vital to either a person or to the rescue services or to society in some way. And you meet the handler, you meet the dog, you get taken through their story. The first episode talks about this extraordinary Great Dane, which is about bigger than me as far as I can work out, who has absolutely, definitely helped this young girl who thought that she would never walk, that she would never swim. But actually, the dog was so big that when she was growing up as a child, the dog became the animal that she could hold on to help her walk. And actually, it's a beautiful story about this young girl who gets to the age of 13 and can walk and can swim and still has this, extraordinary, lovely Great Dane in her life. And then the next story is about a lovely dog that is a rescue dog. And then the third story actually comes from Africa and is about a dog that can smell ivory. And it lives with
Smell ivory.
Ivory, yeah. So they stop people in the elephant regions, and this dog can smell ivory within 2 to 3 seconds. So doing incredibly interesting work. But it's a great series. It doesn't demand much of you. It's a great feel-good program. The love of an animal and the dog and its owner is just fabulous. It's just so nice, and it's totally feel-good. And you could just waste an afternoon watching the 2 series that are there. So Dogs with Extraordinary Jobs on Sky Nature.
I love it. It's so weird you brought that up, because only last night I was watching on YouTube all about Caesar Milan. The dog whisperer and everything like that. I've forgotten how much I enjoyed that stuff. Caesar Milan. I really enjoyed that.
Okay, it's not a series or a person or a reference I know, but I'll take.
You not know Caesar Milan?
You don't know Caesar Milan? Wow. Okay, goodness. Even I've heard of him. Caesar Milan is also known as the Dog Whisperer. That's his nickname. And what he does is I think he's based in America. Where is he based in
LA?
Where he goes around and tries to retrain through dog psychology pets or dogs who are misbehaving or ill-behaved. And
really, he was the after Barbara Woodhouse, you probably then had him. I mean, he was a natural progression before he got all these other shows on TV. Yeah. But he started out very, very briefly as a dog walker. I know, because he walked one of my daughter's friends' dogs. And then he became this huge television personality out there. Caesar Milan, the Dog Whisperer. Oh yes, big deal.
Okay. Yeah. That I didn't know.
Chantal, well, that goes to show the kind of classy television you watch. That's why.
She doesn't muck about like us. She's classy.
It makes actually, I have to tell you though, sort of, it does go to show, because if you've got Russ who's watching the Dog Whisperer and you've got me watching My Cat from Hell, between the pair of us, I think you'll find that there's a distinct lack of intellect going on in this program.
No, not true. Wait a minute. I did watch. Chantal will now try and stay awake for this bit. I did watch an hour yesterday, a tribute to Peter Criss, who was the original drummer in Kiss. Peter Criss, who they fired. It was his 75th birthday.
Wow.
And they had all these people coming on wishing him happy birthday. I got to tell you something, Chantal, because you're looking so particularly buff today. I don't know what it is. Time... I was shocked, because it was from last December. Time has not been kind to everybody in lockdown. I think it's fair. Peter Criss looked great, but Sammy Hagar came on. You know Sammy Hagar?
Yeah, I know Sammy Hagar.
Sammy Hagar, and in my head, he looks like Sammy Hagar from the days of Van Halen, and I used to call it in that era Van Hagar. And suddenly, I thought, Dad, Dad, you're on TV. It was like he cares. He's so successful. I went
to see the Doobie Brothers just before I came back from America about 18 months ago, and saw The Who just around the same time, about 3 or 4 nights before I left Hollywood.
Oh my God.
And they made me feel young, is all I can say.
You ain't kidding. Man, you ain't jiving. Ooh.
That's the most diplomatic way of putting it. I love it. Anyway,
well, of course, if you're in Kiss and you're 75, because Gene Simmons is 72, and Paul Stanley can't be far behind. And of course, with the makeup, they look the same. It's genius. It's absolute genius. You can't tell.
But the difference is they don't need quite as much makeup to make them look that pale anymore. Chantal, what else have you found?
Right. So I have a small penchant for Kevin Bacon, who does more than just adverts on.
He's great.
Television.
Love him.
He's a brilliant actor. I mean, one might remember Apollo 13, in which he was it Apollo? It was 13, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Apollo 13. He was absolutely brilliant in that, and has gone on to do so many brilliant pieces
Hollow
of work.
Man. The Hollow Man. He was great. I loved him in that as well.
Yeah, a great actor, but known particularly in the UK for his EE adverts, which have now been playing, I think, for 6 or 7 years, and we know him more for that than anything else.
Wow.
Anyway, 2 years ago, he brought out a very nice piece of work that was produced by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, who are Bostonians, and it's a police drama called City on a Hill. It's quite graphic, it's quite gritty, but actually it's just lovely to see Kevin Bacon back on screen.
Oh, that's what it is. I keep seeing the ad, and I've never known what it was. And they keep saying City on the Hill. I thought, I wonder what that is. Thank you.
And City on a Hill is supposed to be Boston, and obviously the Boston boys. Damon and Affleck tend to write quite a lot of things about Boston and Boston life and Bostonians. And this is about Kevin Bacon. It's set in the 1990s, which I don't really remember as a decade that was particularly sexy or particularly interesting, or, there weren't any great visual cues for the 1990s that I can particularly remember. But in Boston at the time, there was a lot of police crime, which is not great. So this is based on a true story about a slightly corrupt, I should say, FBI guy played by Kevin Bacon, and a new district attorney who is an African-American played by Aldous Hodge. And they form up to create a team. Clearly at the beginning they can't stand each other, but they come together to fight crime, most particularly a gang of criminals that go around raiding trucks full of banknotes. Anyway, it's based on this true story. It's really interesting. Kevin Bacon is great. Aldous Hodge, actually, if anything, is even better. And it's definitely worth watching. There are 2 series there at the moment. They've just announced they're making a 3rd series, and it's on Sky Atlantic, I think.
Oh,
So
Sky Atlantic. There we go.
Yeah.
So one would assume if it's on Sky Atlantic, it should also be available on demand on Sky as well.
I think it is. It's definitely on demand, and it's probably on Netflix or Amazon too. But although I didn't double check,
It is, because I don't have Sky, but I've seen the adverts on either Netflix or Amazon. I always get them confused, so don't know.
Well, there is a bit of a deal between Sky and Netflix, and indeed Amazon Prime. So it's possible they do share content, so it's perfectly possible you find it on one of them as well.
Absolutely.
Can I say very, very quickly? I made the terrible mistake of watching yet another Nicolas Cage film. Why do I let myself in? Why do I watch Nick Cage films? Because they're, Jesus Christ.
Unless it's Con Air, don't watch it.
No, I love Con Air. It's just
best.
fantastic. Con Air is wonderful. Love Con Air. I've seen it so many times. Anyway, that's not the point. I watched I think it's called The Colour of Space.
Can I just say, I've got something similar here.
Please don't.
Can I just say, I've got something very similar. I've got aircon here, but
Oh, see what you did there. See what you did there. The cast of Con Air, by the way, Chantal, wasn't it just great? Anyway, let me save you 2 hours of your life. Please don't bother to watch The Colour of Space. It is
a waste of space. You could describe it as a waste of space.
No, it's brilliant. It's so bad, it's brilliant.
Oh dear. Right.
I got to the end and I thought, I don't understand what's just. I don't understand what's going on.
Did they at least say what color space was?
Well, it was basically mostly magenta and pink. It would have been. There wasn't even in space. I don't know what the hell it was. Just an opportunity for Nick Cage to go raving. Crank it up to 13, not even 11.
Oh dear, Chantal, I think we need to move on quickly. He's about to go. He's going to need one of his medications in a minute.
I will.
He will. Okay, so I think Russ, you said a couple of weeks ago that you had taken out certainly the free subscription to BritBox.
Yes, indeed.
Which they are still offering.
Oh, no, I bought it. No, I've got the proper paid for it. On your recommendation, I think it's fantastic. I love it.
Very good. So
thank you for that.
as I've possibly mentioned in the past, it's a little bit like UK TV. It takes a lot of the fabulous old stuff that we know and love and we want to watch again. But their point of difference this year is that they're trying to make their own programs. So they brought back Spitting Image about 6 months ago, which you remember we talked about at the time. They just brought out their first drama, which is called The Beast Must Die, with Jared Harris, who is again one of my favourite British Hollywood actors, and Cush Jumbo. Cush Jumbo, you may know as the girl from either Vera. She was one of the original detectives. She's a woman of colour, one of the original detectives. She then went on to The Good Wife, the American TV series that's with Christina Natabransky, can't remember her name. Anyway.
Oh, don't look at me. I'm terrible with names.
But the Good Wife is also absolutely brilliant. Anyway, Cush Jumbo is actually the lead. And Jared Harris comes in at the end of episode 1, and he clearly is a dark force. And Cush plays a mum whose child has been killed in a hit and run. Not a very sexy subject, you would think.
I was going to say, this doesn't sound very feel good.
No, it doesn't. It's not a great. It's, you know, as stories go, it's not a particularly interesting crime, other than how the story then gets played out, because the police park the thing, no pun intended, and they say that they can't find out who did it, and 3 months further down the line, they have stopped looking for the person that has killed this young boy.
And might I say, thank heavens for Dr. Google, by the way, because what we refer to apparently is the actress Christine Baranski.
Baranski, not a Bransky, a Baranski, exactly. Thank you. Anyway, so Cush then goes effectively undercover. She pretends to be a writer, so she can go around the lovely Isle of Wight asking people questions for no other reason than she is trying to get to the bottom of this crime. By the time you get to the end of episode 1, you're thinking, is Jared Harris ever going to appear? You know, he was brilliant and won an Emmy and a BAFTA and a Golden Globe for his role in Chernobyl that came out 2 or 3 years ago, and he was in.
He's still trapped in the ice.
I could be trapped in the ice too.
He's still there with the terror.
But he arrives at the end of episode 1, and we know that things are going to take a very dark turn. Anyway, it's a really cracking first effort from BritBox in terms of drama. Definitely worth watching. Isle of Wight looks fabulous. Cush Jumbo very, very good in the lead. And Jared is really menacing, which is exactly what he's supposed to be.
He is a sensational actor, isn't he? I mean, he is that good.
Yeah,
And
the son of Richard Harris.
I know. And normally, with the greatest of respect, you know, normally, you know, when you're the son of, you're good, but you're never kind of as great as the original. I think he's even better than his dad.
I'll let
God
you.
knows his dad.
I will let you tell David Dimbleby that. But anyway.
No, sorry, Richard Dimbleby was streets ahead. Sorry, no comparison. No comparison. Richard Dimbleby shaped my early life. I thought that's what broadcasting is about. I stand by that. Okay, The Beast Must Die.
The Beast Must Die on BritBox. So either buy the subscription, which is still much cheaper than most of the others, or just get the week for free and watch it. It's a 5-parter. It's not all there yet. So I think they've dropped the first 2 episodes, and then they're dropping the rest of them weekly for the next 3.
Old school, an appointment to view.
Yeah, indeed.
Like have we got Mayor of Easttown, didn't they? They did the same thing, that you had to watch it on a weekly basis.
They did.
Have we got any quick fire suggestions before we run out of time?
So this is I'm going to give you a rom-com, but it is absolutely brilliant. Came out in 2018. It's called The Big Sick. The title does not do it justice, let me tell you, because it sounds as though it's going to be terrible and sad. It's a romantic comedy. It's partly based on the writer and his girlfriend. The writer, who is also who is a stand-up comedian and appears in this, is Kumail Nanjiani, who is absolutely brilliant, and he plays the role of an Uber driver / stand-up comedian who is Pakistani. His parents are trying to get him married off to a good Pakistani girl, but he meets this gorgeous white girl on the night of his stand-up in New York, and they have a pretty fabulous few hours that follow on. And then he takes her back in his Uber car after this encounter at his flat. It's all absolutely
Did he give her a 5-star rating? That's what
I think she gave him a 5-star rating. I think it worked both ways, to be honest.
Okay, just checking.
I'm so pleased you asked about the star rating and not anything else. But anyway,
Well, that's it. Of course, I'm always very polite, as Chantal will tell everybody. Anyway, I missed the title of it. It's called what's it called again?
It's called The Big Sick. They made it for $5 million. It made $56 million. It was absolutely standout. It was nominated for an Oscar. Didn't get one, but should have got one. It's brilliant. It's funny. It's just like a warm bath, and it will utterly cheer you up. So do watch it if you can. It's on the BBC, along with BBC Films. So it's on the iPlayer. And the other thing, if you've got time, is watch the completely silly but fun Florence Foster Jenkins with Meryl Streep and Hugh Grant.
Yes, I heard that was marvelous.
Yeah.
I heard that was marvelous.
Silly but fun.
Anyway, enjoy Dubai.
I will.
Congratulations on all the work you're doing. Sounds fabulous. We eventually will know what it's about, or maybe not. We may never will.
We may never know.
Never know.
But safe onward travel.
Thank you for
whatever you
finding
are
time.
doing.
Really kind of you. I appreciate it a lot.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Chantal. Bye. There you go. Well, that's it. Unbelievably enough,
What a
we are
show.
out of time.
I'm absolutely cream cracker. I don't know about you.
Well, I'm not surprised. I think we need to say a huge thank you to all of the guests who appeared. We've got to say thank you very much to Simon Warman-Freed, to Lord De Laurentiis. Also need to say thank you to John Keel, Johnny Grant, Rose Campion, and of course, we must also say thank you to our very own Chantal as well.
And thank you to everybody for all your fabulous comments and everything like that. Some terrific comments. All being well, with a fair wind, we will be back. If Phil can find the power to stay awake, God knows
I'll
how he's
try.
doing this. I don't know how the hell he's doing this.
I had a line this morning. I wasn't up until about 2:45, so I had a line. So
like swine. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We love your company all over the world. It's been a pleasure. We will be back on Monday at 12 o'clock. Have a lovely weekend. Till then, stay safe.
Bye.